So what we'll do is, obviously got the bag full of the Cobra clubs here. We'll have a run through those. I'll look at all the specs, have a bit of a chat about your game, and get a bit of background info.
Sure thing.
So how long have you played for?
Seriously, for sort of four and a bit years, but I only joined a club 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's 2 years that I've been playing sort of twice a week and really getting a handicap in the first place.
And was that in terms of sort of getting serious? Had you played a bit when you were younger?
Not
Just
really.
having the time to play.
No, a friend invited me on a golf trip in 2016, and I had a set of clubs at my mum's house. So I thought, oh, go on then, I'll give it a go, and just got the bug.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those where once it gets you,
Yeah.
it goes one way or the other, doesn't it? It's one extreme or the other.
Well, we started bad golf in order so that Alex and I would have a minimum of around a month to practice for the trip, because it's like a yearly trip to Spain. Yeah. And that worked really well.
Let's see, it's become unplugged because that's just dropped out. Still, let's make sure that that's probably it. There we go.
So is this the bit where I have to report back to Cobra that all their settings are off?
No, necessarily. I mean, the thing is, ultimately, all the big brands, what they do well is they manufacture to mass tolerances. So ultimately, they do a very good job for doing that, and tolerances have got better and better over the years. But it's just a case that whatever spec you get, it's still being made to wider tolerances than is possible to. But it's only possible to do that when you're making smaller volume.
Yeah.
So so tolerances on the construction of shafts, particularly head weights, have got better, noticeably better over the last few years.
Well, I just started a podcast with Beef Johnston, and I said to him, I'm going for this fitting. What's the most important part of a fitting? And he said the shafts.
Yeah,
and I was like, wow, I did not even thought of that as being something you would fit for.
Yeah, well, it's one of those ones where, so shafts are quite misunderstood, actually, and functionally what they actually do. So people talk about flex and kick points and all the way that they actually bend and load. But ultimately, it's the lever side of it. It's weight and balance points. So if you take any other stick and ball sport, does the implement allow you to move naturally and collect, whether it's someone hitting a ball back at you or a stationary ball? If you haven't got that right, you don't stand a chance of staying balanced in your swing, in your stance. If you're not balanced, you can't. You're changing the plane and the movement of the club. So to be able to stay centered and grounded and to move at speed and with decent technique, you've got to stay in frame. So without that, it doesn't matter what the shaft does. Right. It's that side that's by a long shot the most important.
Right.
It's just that there's a letter on every shaft saying stiff or regular or a number. When they go to a kind of a universal system where they don't want someone to see whether it's a regular or stiff. And generally the elements that have changed when flex changes, people say, it's if you go heavier, it goes right, or you go softer, it goes left. It's actually when you go softer, you normally go lighter.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, left hook. Because obviously the opposite would apply for you being left-handed.
So what's that measuring, or just the weight of the club?
So this is measuring the swing weight. So swing weight's it's a static scale of balance, but it's around a fulcrum, fixed fulcrum. So it gives an indication of where the balance point is in the club. Oh. But because it's around a static fixed fulcrum, it doesn't really tell you how the club feels to swing. So you've got to look at the components, the length, the dead weight, the balance point within the shaft, what grip, to determine how it actually might feel to swing.
Well, that's one thing. I played with Craig Verinda from Cobra. He's got those huge grips, like really, like almost like a putter grip on the. Yeah. I'd definitely like to try a bigger grip. I've got quite big hands.
Okay.
It's not an easy thing to sort of shift around and try out.
It's not. No. It's one of those ones where we fit generally. We've got some longer than standard setups with bigger grips on as a sort of a base point, but that's something that once we get the effective kind of spec in the right kind of place, if someone does need a mid-size, then we'll switch one on. Because what often changes when you change the grip size, you normally change grip weight.
Right.
And
I think they might be mid-size. Well, they certainly said they were, but I'm not sure.
They're a standard.
Are they?
But they're bigger in the button now. Whether they've built up, whether the shaft's quite wide. Let's have a look at the taping. It looks a fairly standard layering. So with some shafts, they continue to get wider and wider as they go to the top.
Right.
And then some get to about here and then stay fairly parallel.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where we've seen over the last couple of years more and more how sensitive people are to dead weight. So if you go to a mid-size grip, most of the time you add 10 grams.
Right.
Or thereabouts. Some are more than that. And so if you're putting 10 grams in the grip end, you've got to keep the feel and the balance in the club head, you've got to add weight to the club head, you're 15 grams heavier, which actually makes a big difference.
Yeah.
So that's, to an average driver shaft weight, that's 25%. So it's something that requires some consciousness about as well. So if someone's very sensitive to the overall weight of the club when you're testing, then you're almost certainly going to find that going to, for example, a multi-compound mid-size is a 64-gram grip, but the standard grip's a 50-gram grip.
Yeah. So
that's absolutely going to have an effect. But one wouldn't necessarily think, oh yeah, it's just a grip, just a bit of rubber. And it's a bit like some of the Arcos grips with the sensor built
the
in.
Connect one.
You have to build the club essentially because you've got an extra quarter of an inch, 3/8 of an inch out the top. You have to build it as if you're putting a normal grip on and then put the Arcos on, and it throws the swing weight off. And, there's some complications. So what made you start the Bad Golf podcast, sort of YouTube channel?
I think we just wanted to. We loved watching all the sort of challenges and stuff, and Rick Shields and Peter Finch and all that, but there wasn't anything we felt that reflected our standard.
Yeah.
So when we started, I think we were both probably up about 24, 25. And, that's what most people...
Yeah.
Most people I play with at my club are sort of between 18 and 26.
And so you do just generally see people who are very good golfers.
Yeah. And whilst that's
dig
amazing, I think it's more encouraging. Because you watch someone going around in 3 over, and then you head out to your course, and you're 3 over on the first hole. Yeah. It sort of makes you feel like golf isn't for you, whereas actually golf doesn't matter whether you're scoring 110 or 75, you can have just as much enjoyment.
As you say, and all we see, like any sport you watch, there's only really the best golf shown.
Yeah,
the best
exactly.
players in the world.
Even watching a major, they're not showing the guy shooting 83, and there are people shooting 83.
Basically, as we go through, seeing if there are any anomalies kicking up or any kind of trends in particular.
Anything you noticed so far?
Nothing stand out yet in terms of either. Actually, the woods are pretty consistent. There's the good side, and you don't always see this, is that there's a general correlation between the type of shafts you've got in your woods in terms of weight, proportional weight and balance point, and in the irons.
Okay.
So you do sometimes see some quite funky combinations.
Yeah.
Where it's just, there's a shaft that happens to be available in a hybrid that's, say, 80 odd grams, but you've got a 50-gram driver shaft.
And this is checking the angle.
And this is loft and lie. Yeah. So, and again, making sure that there's consistent loft gaps, that lies are in sync. With the cast heads like these, you get to the forged and cast heads, and the forged ones can bend more easily, can be adjusted more easily, and the cast ones...
So that's the 7-iron there?
Yeah.
28 degrees?
28 degrees, yeah.
You can see what it says on the website.
Which is fairly strong. And it's...
they're very strong, those.
And that's one of the things that actually does create quite a few issues for players now, is that one of the things that we are finding more and more and more, where the industry's have striven for just more yardage, is that, your 6-iron at 24 degrees is where not that long ago my 4-iron would have been.
Yeah.
And then people say, well, why won't it stop? So it's become...
So 7-iron's meant to be 26 and a half. Is it unusual to get that much sort of?
Not massively.
No.
If you think, give or take, it's a degree tolerance.
Well, that's what someone was saying to me. If you get some manufacturers, if you get your clubs adjusted by 1 degree, the margin of error on their service is 1 degree. So you might end up with this, just them sending back the same club.
Yeah, and some of that is partly that some of these heads, for example, that could be, in principle, can be bent and moved, but then might recover back. So you might get a head in a set that moves really easily, and then the next one just will not bend.
Yeah.
So that can create some of those tolerances. There's nothing too weird so far.
Unless I actually asked them to bend these back a degree, in which case I apologise, which I may have done.
Well, no, and it's something that they might well have based on the loft and where I'd expect the flight to be. I mean, it's almost getting to the point where you kind of have to look at a 6-iron as a 5-iron flight, and kind of graduate them back from there. So, for example, a 6-iron at 24, the pitch wedge in this set's going to be, it's going to be just over 40 degrees, which is pretty darn strong. So the gap wedge comes in at 45, 46, which is pitch wedge loft. So you almost have to look at the 6 to gap wedge as almost like a 5 to pitch.
Yeah.
Relative to in old money club wise. So, and that's happening more and more. But it's definitely hit the kind of the top end on what's doable on how strong these lofts can get, because you can't just keep pushing them lower and lower and lower, because it just makes clubs completely unplayable. Anything at the moment? Right. What do you do right-handed and what do you do left-handed?
The only things I do left-handed are bat, cricket, and play golf.
Got it. Because that actually makes quite a difference to how you move. If you're kind of prominently right-sided, then or prominently right-sided, then actually your golf swing comes from the lead side, so it's a pull through rather than almost push through.
Well, this is the fault of all of the problems I have with my shots, is that I'm sort of lean forward.
Front foot batsman.
Well, no, because
orthodox.
I solved the original problem. Was this?
Right.
So this was like back foot cover drive.
Yeah.
But now we're into a bit more sort of. Anyway, but I'm happy with where my game's at the minute.
Yeah. So 43 degrees is the pitch wedge.
Right.
So actually a reasonable gap between your pitch wedge and your 9-iron. So it starts to get kind of 5/6 degree gaps between those. So actually it kind of starts to spread out a reasonable bit. But then it has to get to a relatively neutral loft.
Yeah.
Okay. Any injuries at all? General mental scarring.
Grumbling hip, and I got a lower back problem, but that's not been a problem for a while. But I'm getting I get cross training with a ex golf pro, who now runs a CrossFit gym. So he sort of devised a plan for me, and I've been doing that since January. So I've added about 20 yards to my drive and probably about 7 yards to my 7-iron over the course of that. So decent.
And is that with the back element of it? Does that affect range of motion? Is it
no, not really.
Mobility generally?
I've got quite. Well, certainly when I started with him, because a lot of what we do is flexibility. I had very limited rotation, but we've really improved that now.
Yeah.
Well, it was called the Golf Hole in Amersham, but it's now called, I think it might be called just Chiltern CrossFit. But he had a simulator and stuff and would do golf lessons and fitness, and then he shut the simulator side of things down and concentrates on the CrossFit.
Nearly there. So in terms of general setup, really pretty consistent.
Great.
When we're looking at the consistency of balance and overall setup. It's,
Well, I was fit for these, and they've got a really good fitter at Cobra.
Sadly, doesn't mean they're built well, but actually these ones have been built well.
Yeah.
Certainly.
It's like they do those, the My Golf Spy do those checks on golf balls.
Yeah.
And some of those, you know, there's a margin for error in a golf ball with the size and everything, and you get the odd dud.
It's got them all to be a bit more on their toes from a manufacturer's point of view. Ever since the Callaway thing came out with, I think it was the consistency of roundness, and they were actually in the process of developing a new facility anyway, but they got, should we say, kind of singled out a little bit. It's kept them all on their toes a bit.
Do you do ball fittings here?
Ball fittings are an interesting one.
I've never heard of anyone getting a ball fitting.
And it's doable. The only problem for a ball fitting is failing to multitask miserably. Is that from a practicality point of view, it's quite tough. Simply because you've got to do it properly. Is very time prohibitive. You've got to hit several different ball types with driver, mid-iron, wedge, and actually would end up being,
for the sake of selling a 25 quid.
Well, it's more. It would probably be a good 2.5 hour session, and actually the really finite difference for a lot of players over that period of time to be able to kind of find the minutiae of it would make sense to do within a brand. Rather than across all brands, because you could do that in a lot less time. You could identify whether you're at the performance end or distance end, or excuse my spidery doctor-like writing. But to do it as an independent ball fitting would be, you'd have to charge far too much to make it viable because of the time.
Yeah.
However, when you're doing when you're going through a fit, you can certainly see whether someone requires a little bit more flight, a little bit more spin. If you're within a Titleist brand, whether you're a Pro V1, Pro V1 X player, or or if you're kind of coming down a tier, whether you want something that retains a bit, whether you're prioritising round the green control or straightness, and give a steer as to 2 or 3 options that would certainly work well. There's sort of 2 different answers I generally get when I ask what ball someone plays. It's either a premium ball like a Pro V1 or it's a white round one.
Yeah. I don't know many people who are that fussy about the ball they play.
Or whichever one I find walking up the right-hand side of the first hole. So, okay. So with your game overall, are there any bits of the bag in particular that you feel more comfortable with, that you get on better with?
I'd say at the minute my problem is iron striking. So the actual strike is often quite close to the hosel.
Right.
And I sort of top a lot of them. But I think that's due to do with I don't take divots.
Yeah. Is that something that you've never, I guess from what you're saying about action-wise, that you've never been a big divot taker, basically?
Never been a big divot taker. I have had lessons that have helped, but it always seems to sort of disappear again.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, again, there's a strong chance that you can relate that into you being more front-side dominant. If you're somebody who pulled up with that side, then that's going to pull you back up that way. Whereas if you're somebody pulled down on the handle, that actually gives a bit of a sighter as to how your swing works. Probably more rotational than lateral. Yeah. I mean, if you take the extremes, you've got someone like Garcia who's left-handed, who just gouges down into the turf. And then someone like Spieth is he's actually working on getting a little bit steeper onto it, but it's much quieter through the ball, much less steep. So it's fascinating how the kind of the musculature someone's got and muscle groups they use to swing affect that really affects how you manoeuvre the club. Yeah. So going back over these, really, I say swing weights. Other than actually your 56 wedge is the two min wedges, outer set wedges are shaft-wise about 25 grams heavier, so quite a lot heavier. Yeah. But the swing weight-wise, you go from between D1 and D2 on the main body of the irons, on the LTDX irons, and you're up at D6 odd with the 2 wedges. So they're a very different balance. So those ones are likely to be something that don't work as well if you're trying to put anything more than a short kind of pitching swing on.
Right. Yeah, I'm really bad full swing with my wedges.
So where the lighter, so you've got a 95 gram shaft in the irons in the KBS Tour 90, which is also a mid to upper mid balance point, so it's not tip heavy. So that the whole club is going to be able to come through quite. It's a very even balanced profile through. You then go to the, granted it's still a KBS shaft, but the high rev and the 125. So it's best part of say good 25 grams heavier than the shorter irons in your iron set.
Oh, that's interesting.
So the dead weight's a lot heavier. So that's going to take a lot more effort to get moving and get through the ball. But then also balance-wise is more head heavy. So
Okay.
there's club relative to the rest of your irons is quite an appropriate word because there is just a lot of extra mass to get moving.
Yeah.
So it's likely to get a little behind you and catch a little bit heavy. And that's something we can see just from that. But I mean, other than that, within the irons, they're actually really pretty consistent. Even loft and lie development's pretty consistent through the set. And then similar into the woods, so they're all on the lighter side, shaft-wise, into the mid-50s. Hybrids, the 480 and the year 6 is about 60, 65 grams. So they tie in pretty closely together and generally speaking complement where the irons are pretty well. So there's nothing that red flags straight away,
Okay,
which is
great.
really nice. So what we'll do from there is next bit is just really have a loosen up.
Yep.
I'll move the balls to the correct side.
Okay. What club would you like me to loosen up with?
Anything at all. If you're going to have a loosen with the kind of shorter iron, if it's anything kind of pitch wedge or down, just on the front mat. If it's 9 iron or up, just buy the white tees. Perfect. Purely from a trajectory point of view, coming back at you. So these ones are literally just warm-up swings. I'll kind of stand and watch and get a bit of a feel for how your swing works. But so aim point is the edge of the small mat in front of you on the ground, kind of down the edge of that. So your kind of aim line, just effectively straight down that line. And general shot pattern, would you tend to see miss more likely to be a little right, little left?
It was always had a fade or a slice. But since I've sort of got rid of that on my irons now.
Yeah.
But that does mean it's a bit of a lottery because I never would ever hit a ball right ever.
Yep.
And now I'm having to aim straight, but everything is telling me to aim right because I think the ball's going to go left. But
I know. I always used to hit like a 10, 20 yard draw and did some swing work and lost the big shape. But the problem now is I've got to aim at a pin on the left. It's amazing how mentally uncomfortable that is.
yeah.
Yeah, swing path, very neutral. Very neutral. Did you play much cricket when you were younger?
I did, but stopped pretty much when I was in my early 20s. And I was more of a bowler.
Swing.
Ball feels heavy. What is this?
Show which ball is that one?
I think it's a Pro V1X. I use Pro V or a Bridgestone RX.
Okay, yeah. In the Pro VX, so I've heard you saying feels heavy. It's that firmer core, harder sound. So particularly the Bridgestone, the RX is a softer construction. So Pro V1 won't feel quite as firm. That one I think is a true soft. Yeah, and we can use. We've got some Pro V1s, or we can use if you've got some Bridgestones. We'd like to use those. We can use those.
I might have a Pro V. But then there's one here. It's fine.
We got Pro V1s that we can use. So.
I don't think I'm good enough to be worrying about particularly.
Generally speaking, how often would you get out and play?
Twice a week.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, ideally. Right. Feels okay.
Great stuff. So what we'll do, I'll collect. I'll get the relevant balls together we can use. And then those two, perfect there. Right, so you've got the 7 there, haven't you? So what it will do, partly because of the 7 iron being that 28-degree loft, it's actually kind of a fairly neutral kind of basically 6 iron loft.
Yeah.
We'll use that just to get a look at the pitch of flight, launch and spins and things, and then take it all from there. What would you play if you got a par 3 on a good distance for a 7 iron? What would you play it for? Ish.
What, for carry?
Yeah. Just more to get a bit of a
I
guide.
would probably like
feel
148 carry, 155, but it's somewhere in that.
Yep. Perfect.
That tolerance.
Great. So we'll get a kind of 4 or 5. We'll get a good kind of base point with the 7.
Yep.
Just a few more. Just to. Would you say are you more kind of rhythm, tempo based as a player, or is it more natural to play, almost to play within yourself a little bit? Or so I've always been better going down a club and hitting it harder. I've never been good at subtlety.
No, I'd say I'm usually short.
Okay.
In fact, I know I am. Arcos keeps telling me.
That's right. You and 99% of golfers. We all do it.
Oh, that was my miss. That was off the.
Okay.
Ugh.
And the good side of that is it shows that you're the optimistic golfer who's playing for a yardage you know you can achieve.
That's a bit better.
Tempo. Okay. Swing. Should find that one.
That was horrible.
And how long have you had the Cobra irons now?
Had these about 4 months.
Okay.
I had the speed zone before these. That was better.
Solid, good hit. Okay, one more would be great. Yeah, nice couple of swings to finish there. Okay. Right. So I'll just sort of run you through what it is in particular that I'm looking at here. So what's nice consistent club speed. So how much launch monitor data have you done?
Quite a bit.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So in terms of data-wise, what we can see, club speed and ball speed, and then that smash in particular, for anyone who's watching the cast back, is ratio ball speed to club speed. So there are certain formulas we want to see in particular bits of the bag. So for a 6-7 iron, anything up around the 140 mark's good. So you can see that second to last shot there. 145, that's a really strong contact, hence 156 carry. So, just a very, very nicely timed shot. And generally speaking, launch and looking at it from a loft point of view rather than saying 7 iron, because I think I'd be looking at this loft being kind of a vertical standard 6 iron loft. Average, there was one a little bit. That first one's a little bit clean. If I don't want to sugarcoat. If you take kind of solid hits to get a gauge on flight. Yeah. 16 launch, mid 4s on spin. He's on the stronger side. Now, if you've been working on angle of attack and getting more on top of it, then that would have brought flight down. So where your attack angle's 3.5 degrees down on average, there's one a bit steeper at 6. 3.5 is very neutral. Yep. You're looking kind of 3 to 4, that kind of ballpark there. So it is giving you a fairly strong ball flight. It's not ridiculous. Fairly strong.
So when you say strong, do you mean sort of like low?
Yeah, just on the lower side. Now, if you've gone from being angle attack-wise, literally kind of picking it off the top to 3 or 4 down, then that's going to change dynamically how much loft you're delivering. That will have brought it down a reasonable bit. That will give you 5-10 yards more yardage. If that's helped get a little bit more kind of hands forward and covered position, then you just end up putting more ball speed on, and then launch and spin come down. So you're up at 70 odd, 65, 70 feet height. The angle it's landing at's just under 40. Now, I wouldn't want it any lower. That's starting to come in quite punchy. Yeah. So that'll be something to see as we go through. How does that develop? But it's not. the spin and launch aren't wildly disproportionate. It's not like your 19-degree launch and 4,000 spin. Then that would be a lot of launch and no spin whatsoever. So there are a couple of keys in particular. I think for me it's more club face control than your swing line. Club path is, generally speaking, if you're looking at the warm-up swings, you are 0.0 to 1.6, so you're only less than 2 degrees offline. There was 1 at 3 there, so 3 degrees out to in. And that might be where that's come off a little hotter, a little flatter, it's just got a little bit more over on top. But the path itself's really pretty neutral. Again, angle of attack, considering that's something you've been working on, is quite repeating. So your delivery pattern's pretty neutral, pretty stable. Most golfers look at me quizzically with that going, no, can't be, not the way I play. But the bit where there's a tolerance on it, where the variables come in, and I'll add these back in, is face to path number. So you go anything from, okay, if we take that one that was a bit more smothered over, but you're 0.2 to -5. So you've got there's quite a lot of volatility to where the club face is getting to, considering how little variation in the line you're putting the club on is.
Right.
And that to me says, right, where's the club head? You're not communicating with the club head particularly well. It's not what I want the club to do is swing you a little bit. You're having to put club head on the back of the ball.
Right.
So what you tend to see, for someone who's top hand dominant, you tend to see either very much that kind of steer on, because I'll grab that. So as you're coming down, swing kind of a left-sided swing. That position is very stable, so I'm very, very right-handed. So if I were to swing left-handed, I'm either doing that and holding the face open, or that and ripping it over and missing it wildly right. You don't have any of the big ones left at the moment, so there's a little bit over, but that to me suggests you're overpowering the club head end and doing that quite a bit.
Could that be, because I've got quite a strong grip, which was to try and get rid of my slice. Now I have sort of got rid of my slice, but I still have a strong grip. Could it be to do that big part of it?
Certainly, absolutely. That'll certainly change those patterns a little bit. However, if you've got that stronger grip and you're now working the toe over, the bit so you'd look at that bit from a technique point of view, but then the other bit to say, right, are the clubs complementing that technique? So is there enough weight in the club head to drop it into plane so that you're working that club through one line? If it's not, and you start to overpower the weight of it, it generally pulls the club up, which shuts the face down, and then you're smothering it.
Yep.
So we might need to, and that's where sort of technique changes can mean a slight development in setup of the clubs to work with that. One of the things I would tend to look at, just let your arms hang by your side. So where I've got, we stand there so the camera will see, I've got quite a strong inward rotation in my forearms, whereas you're more there.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that I tend to look at and say, okay, where's your natural grip position? Because if you're working away from, so my arms hang there, if I then grip a club there, my arm wants to get back to there at impact.
Yep.
So, and if your arm naturally hangs there, and you're going there, then you're changing your arm position. So that'll have an effect on how consistently you're finding a neutral point through the ball.
Sure.
So that's, again, one of those things where the one grip doesn't fit all. We would have very different neutral grip positions.
Yeah.
So certainly from an iron point of view, with these, that club face control, it's either going to be something that with that strengthening of the grip, we need to look at, it might just be making the heads heavier to help. We should do this to help as you've got more on top and working the face more that way over. As you do that, we need more weight in the club head to keep it there, so you can work through the line and to keep the face square and not turn it over. Right. Or it could mean a slight change in shaft weight as well and balance point within the shaft. So that's going to be the first bit to explore, is saying, okay, actually, if we take, I'll start up with you, so I'll weight up the 7 to start with, but if we take those components, develop the head weight a bit, how does that change the pattern through the ball? Does that tighten dispersion up? Because swing-wise, it's really pretty consistent. But the problem is, on the range, you'll have enough shots to find a pattern, to find the manipulation to square the face up. But then you've got one goal on the course. Yeah. And then it goes, well, that one's gone off, right, what do I do next? And then all sorts of Zorro come into it. So we're going to effectively take each individual element and say, right, in kind of baseline, it doesn't look a bad dead weight. It's not very stuck behind you. You're not really whipping it across. So if we develop the head weight a little bit, what does that do? good or bad change. And then once we know that, we can take it all from there.
Sure thing.
Stop me and ask any questions as we go through as well. So, can you see if there's a lead tape roll on one of the other benches? Thanks. Magical lead tape. So when we're checking the weight and testing for that, the easiest way of doing it is with lead tape. So for head weight, it's normally 1 or 2 grams. So a swing weight point is essentially 2 grams.
Right.
But if you change shaft weight by 8, 9 grams, 10 grams, that's a swing weight point change as well. So it's, thank you very much. I'm just whilst we test this, I'm going to take the Arcos off so I can swing weight it.
Yeah.
How often do you videos?
Once a month for those, but we make 2 videos out of it, so they, in theory, should come out every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But we're going to do one with Beef next week where he caddies for me. Because he's had a thumb injury, so he's not quite up to...
He's been injured, hasn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, but he can, I think he said he can hit up to about 170 yards, so he's going to caddy me 9 holes at his home course, and then we might do a bit of a challenge on a par 3.
And is the premise there to see how our professional caddying for amateur improves their shot decisions?
Yeah. But also, we've never actually met in person, so it'd be nice to just think today's golfer are going to come down and sort of do a when Beef met John kind of thing.
So what I've done, I've taken swing weight up from D1, basically up to put a swing weight point on.
Yep.
Yeah. So we'll see how that changes the timing and the pattern. So essentially, if it's a good change, what you'll find is that you can just turn through the ball, and the clubhead finds the ball without you having to do much manipulation. You can just move and collect it. And if it doesn't help, then it'll feel heavy, get stuck behind, and cause you to have to heave at it. It's a bit of reflective tape for the TrackMan.
Oh, right.
Some of the some more of the RCT balls coming.
So I was using you added weight to the
swing weight of the ball. Yeah, it's a left bias ball. Yeah. Okay. Nice. Okay, so there are kind of certain keys and triggers that I'm looking for as you swing, and it's mainly literally as you transition and change direction. That's this probably biggest change in force in the swing. So if it's going to break down from a general setup point of view, it's right there as you fire from the top. So what I can see is that that's starting to drop down into plane better, whereas take the weight off, the club head starts to move out over the top of plane. So it allows your hands and arms to kind of soften off, relax, and just let the club fall into line. Okay, now push that a little. I want to find too heavy, and then we'll bring it back down. So that, straight away, those 3. First one's a little bit of a sighter. And then, that one went quite well. And then you just hit the first one you had today. Now, gone still turned over a little bit more. But then back squared off. So each swing, you're able to manage that shot pretty well. So there's a bit more sensation with the bit you're trying to hit the ball with, ultimately. So
Is that 161 carry?
Yeah. Yeah, that one just 100. Absolutely ripped.
I have to remember this is a 6-iron. Essentially, this is a 6-iron.
Off point, yeah. Say yes, it's got a 7 on the bottom, but equally speaking, that one's drawn a little bit more. So path was 1 degree into out, face closed, face to path, basically 3 degrees shut. So it's drawn, taken a little bit of spin off. But then the next swing was, let's see, club speed, a little bit more club speed, but face to path 0.5. So that's then allowing you to start to just leave the club face, leave it online, because your swing's 1 degree out to in, very, very online. You don't need to do anything with the club face, it's already there. So if we get the weight right, that allows you to just free it up through the ball. It's like throwing a ball, you just let go rather than have to kind of slew your arm around to find it. So that one then picked up a little bit of launch, a little bit of spin, or a little bit of spin in particular. Yes, for more club speed was slightly shorter because it didn't supercharge it off the face. But that then allowed you to hit a very, very, very neutral shot that had 4 foot of shot shape on it. So I'm going to push that head weight a little bit further.
Okay.
And essentially, these are the little differences that, because of the volume of clubs that we do, we can do these little changes because they're all done in the workshop next door, rather than, we're not making thousands of sets a day. Okay, let's just go on a little bit more again. So I'll just develop that weight to the point we find it slightly heavy. So if you push it too far, the exaggeration is lead ball at the end of a piece of string.
Yeah.
It starts to get detached, and then the clubber gets stuck behind, and then you have to kind of heave at it to get it through. Which is where that is now. That's a little heavy. So, so both of those now have added another half a swing weight point, another gram, and those two have both gone out left.
Right.
So path 0.0, 1 degree out to in, face 6 degrees open, 4 degrees open. So you're then having to flip it to, so I'll take that a little bit off.
Very good.
Reassuringly sensitive creatures. So the amount of change between these two is literally that.
Wow.
But at 75 miles an hour, going 0 to 75 in a half a second.
Yeah.
If that clipped your ankle, you know about it. But top hand dominant players are more sensitive generally to head weight than body, because bottom hand dominant, I can recover it palm forward a lot easier than that way, because that way is a really strong rip, whereas that's a softer move. So you can kind of manage club face a little easier from a heavy position, being bottom hand dominant. And so take the half a point off, and that one's then dead straight. Easy game. Like I said, that's one that can't be that easy. It can't be that simple.
That was a bad swing.
Little clean. But it's interesting actually how for you, direction is quite stark. So yes, that wasn't quite struck, but that's all of, I'll put kind of side total on here. That's 18 foot left. The previous one was 7 foot left. The earlier one at that weight, 3 foot right, and then the one you drew was 30 foot right. But the two with the heavier weight on were 45 foot left and 70 foot left.
One thing I will say, my miss is quite good. It's not tends not to be catastrophic.
No, because your path's good. The delivery line's very neutral, and that's what means you're not having to manage the club face a lot to keep it straight.
Oh, that was horrible.
A little heavy. See one more of that weight, and I'll look at those face tolerances with you.
That was better.
Nice contact. So maybe a little right, but not really. Very neutral. So if I were to take, just because we know these two are too heavy, so I'm just going to put those into the kind of the ignore category. If we look at now the sort of bottom numbers here are the tolerances.
So I'm going to take a photo of that screen if that's all right.
Actually, interestingly enough, those two. So what we're seeing here, so what it's done is it's tightened up path as well as face to path. So your path without the weight on was 1.5 out to in, tolerance 1.5, and then the face to path was 3 degrees left open. Ridiculous, you have to think about it. if it was trying to go, that's close. It's 3 degrees open, so pointing left with a tolerance of 1.8. Okay, the tolerance is a little tighter, but you're now 0.3 as an average, and 0.4 for a path point of view, rather than 1.7 and 3. So from a side average point of view, 6 foot from 26, and tolerance similar. There are a couple of misses either way, but it's straighter, just down the line more. So if I go to a dispersion pattern point of view, now there's one. That's a little heavier from a. I don't want to over sugarcoat things, but so essentially we've brought. That's where. Carry. That's more relevant. A little bit more that side of the line, slightly short, just basically bleeding off a little. Let me just make sure I'm not. Yeah. We're going a little longer, a little straighter. So by going a little bit heavier, it allows you to use the head weight a bit more. Actually, what I can see is that we'll cross-reference with a couple of shafts just to make absolutely sure, but I would be very surprised if we found something that's going to create a noticeable jump forward for a base shaft point. I mean, the Tour 90s, which have been replaced by the Tour Lights, which are in essence the same. They're just a slight update on the shaft.
Right.
Do look to be working very, very well. So that little bit of extra weight has allowed us to do is just basically tighten up how that club basically drops in rather than working over a little bit, and then you're not having to manage the club face as much. You can just turn through the line and tighten up the dispersion. So flight-wise, average is broadly speaking the same, bar like a couple of hundred revs on spin, but we've now got a slightly more efficient contact. So mile an hour less club speed, but 2 miles an hour ball speed.
Brilliant.
So that's a good start. So I'm going to get a head that I can interchange some shafts into just to cross-reference that side. But certainly putting the swing weight point on, that looks to be a very good option.
So do these just pull out?
You get effectively a Bunsen burner, get a flame, a heat on the hosel, which melts the glue, and then you press it off. However, you can do that weighting can be done either with lead tape, or you can do it internally. You can do it through the top of the grip.
Really?
Or if we were changing grips, you'd do that when you take the grip off. You could do it down the shaft because it's such a small amount. It'll sit right down the very. I'll do this to camera effectively, right down the very bottom of the hosel bed there.
Right.
If you had to put a lot of weight in, it can backfill and go up here, which you don't want.
So it doesn't really matter at what point the weight goes on?
For that amount, no.
Right.
because in a club head that's 260 grams, we're looking at 2.5 grams.
Yeah.
So you're
So
not
1%.
barsing anywhere by putting a little bit in there. If you start to get to 8-10 grams, then yes, you're starting to draw the centre of gravity a little bit more towards the hosel, and actually almost above the strike point, which you don't really want to do. You can glue in a heavier tip mass right at the bottom. Or would look to start to use a little bit of lead tape as well to even it up, keep it behind the strike point. So I will get a similar head. It'll be the same sort of loft, but one that I can change some shafts into as well. Let's see. Let's go with. And one I can manage the weight on as well. Let's go with that. Okay. So I'm going to look at similar base weights, but just different positions of weight in the shaft. So because adding a bit of weight's helped, I want to test putting a bit of weight down the bottom of the shaft. So a bit more tip balanced in the shaft. What got you into golf originally?
Mixture of boredom and an obsession with figures.
Okay.
I'd always like playing sort of occasionally every couple of months with my mates, hacking away around a course. But I think once you realise you can do one good shot out of 90, you want to do more. And then you want to. My goal was always to play bogey golf and manage to get down below that quite quickly.
No, okay. That's good. I mean, it's actually doing this as you kind of realise actually how it's very easy. Like you were saying earlier, you see all the tour players playing and all the blogs of people hitting you with beautiful golf swings, and kind of forget the golf's really hard.
Yeah, and also like fascinated by the mental side of it. What amateurs can do that pros do that isn't about spending money or equipment. It's about how you approach a course and how you deal with yourself.
Lots about preparing properly. Yeah.
Yeah.
The age-old bacon sandwich and a hamstring stretch.
Yeah.
At most. The bending bar from next door. So I'm just going to make sure this is the same loft as what we were hitting there. Perfect. Yeah. Thank you very much.
So this is something being bent.
Yeah. So just moving the loft and lie. Basically, this is a little a degree off and loft, and I want to make sure it's exactly the same. So, with the adapters on, we've got a little bit less to move. So you can move them. Some heads you can move quite a lot.
Yeah.
You can move them a small amount a lot without doing damage. But you can only move them a lot very few times.
Yeah.
So make sure you get that half a degree more. Get exactly the same loft as the one we're testing. So that way there's no falsifying anything from a flight point of view. I mean, this is also very much a case of saying, okay, with what you've got, if we treat the 7 as sort of trying to find, okay, let's treat that more of a, what they call 6-iron ball flight. There's got to be value in making a change. Something like a swing weight change that we're looking at is actually quite minimal. It's not a cost-heavy thing to do. But what we've already seen is can then have an effect on accuracy and consistency of shot. So we've got to be realistic in saying, okay, if we're going to improve on that, it's got to make a really tangible difference for you on course to make it worth, for example, changing shafts where you're going to be at potentially 60, 70 pounds a club, or a complete new set, you're then hundreds of pounds a club. So it's realistically got to be quite a jump forwards.
So just hit this like as
yeah.
normal.
So we've got a similar kind of shaft, but it's definitely not heavier in the shaft, but the weight's more in the bottom half of it, so it will move differently. We'll get kind of 2 or 3. First one's always that little bit of a sighter. 73 mils, and that one's just under 77. So, okay. So it actually that one I would say looks a little bit clumsy in the bottom half. So that you can see having to make a bit of a fetch through.
Feels a lot stiffer for some reason. I don't know whether that's just that's probably not the case, but just
each one of those
feels more solid.
Yeah, and with essentially when you've got weight in the bottom half of the shaft, it can, because you're effectively swinging the bottom half of the club rather than just kind of the club head, which is what we've done with that.
Yeah.
And that will have an effect on, I'd say, feels are sort of, we've all got different languages for feel.
Sure,
so
yeah,
part
yeah.
of doing this, interpreting what's a good
Feels
solid
thicker.
sort of. Okay. But yeah, definitely and what most of us attribute to a feeling of stiff is heavy. And so with a bit more in that bottom half, then it's likely to feel like you've got to work harder and therefore a bit more structure, a bit more solid to get through the ball. So let's take it up a little bit more. So what do you do outside of the bad golf stuff?
Radio show on 5 Live on a Friday, and stand-up comedy and podcasts
That's a tough gig. That sort of requires a thick skin.
I was at Greenwich yesterday at a festival.
Yeah.
It was good fun. But yeah, obviously the last few years have been interesting times.
I was going to say, from a comedy point of view, it's had to, I'd imagine, had to change depending on your kind of style.
What are the different colours?
I normally get that one when it goes pink. But, no, it's literally as I change the tags to differentiate between what we're testing, it just comes out with a different colour. Okay, that's fine. So that's still, so that shaft was neutral weighted, a bit lighter, and that again just doesn't, not getting clean contact, overloading, overworking it, contact gone.
I mean, is that a blade, or is that sort of a...
No, so this is still, they've got a fill-in, a very, very thin, effectively plastic fill-in in the back, which does a little bit structurally, but mainly it's a sound thing, and it's not getting dirt and grit into the cavity back. But a similar kind of construction to your current ones. Let's take that back up a little heavier. And you can see within one or two swings whether something suits less well or better. Less well is very easy, especially because what you've got actually works well. So we can see anything that's you kind of have to go back to finding contacts here, and okay, that's not where we want it to be. Okay. So just bringing shaft weight back up. This is really fairly similar to your current ones for raw weight. Straight away, ball speeds back up immediately. Okay. Right. Okay, and now I'm just going to go. So, moment we go back to your 95 gram shaft, much cleaner through the ball.
Right.
And I'm going to push you the other side, go a little heavier. So we tried a little bit lighter, heavier in the tip, lighter, similar balance point, back up in line, and straight away that started to collect better. I'm now going to push it a little bit heavier. See whether you need challenging a bit more.
So what's this sort of usual weight before we put the weights on?
So the shaft weight's at 95 grams, 90 to 95.
So that's then 97 with the tape.
So head weight we've changed from broadly speaking to around the 260 gram mark. So the head's by a mile the heaviest bit of the club. Yeah. It's just when you put it on a lever that long and then a grip on the end to counterbalance, it doesn't feel as heavy. So when you pick up a head on its own, so for example, that probably feel quite a lot heavier than you expected. Yeah. So it's and that's where actually very, very small changes in head weight can have quite a big effect on the way the whole club swings. Yeah. Ironically, even though it's the heaviest part of the club by a long shot. A 2 gram change in the head, you need to change the grip by 5 or 6 to have the same effect on balance. But you'd use the weight in the different bits of the club depending on whether someone swings the head or swings the handle end. So.
Do you ever get people coming and you watch them and you think, there's nothing I can do to a club to fix the monstrosity of your swing?
There are times. I mean, if someone's got for example, with a driver in particular, where due to head designs now, you need to ideally be sweeping it, catching it very slightly on the flat or up. Yeah. And you get someone who's 8 degrees down and 10 degrees out to in, with the face 12 degrees open. Well, there can be things that the club can do to help, but ultimately, if someone's that far off technique-wise, you can't fix that alone with a club.
No.
There's got to be technique work in with that as well. And really, it's about being honest with people and saying that this is actually, you know, if you can change X, Y, Z from a swing point of view, you can demonstrate this is 95% of the difference.
Yeah.
There are times when a change in the club can help facilitate it, but you generally want them to do a bit of the swing work first. Okay. So this is effectively a heavier cousin to the shaft you've got. Same brand, same balance point, just 10 to 15 grams heavier. Okay. So with that one, we'll do one more, but there, as you fire from the top, the club gets a little bit behind you, so hence that last one into the ground behind the ball. So when you put a really good move on, it'll be great, but a little bit off, it'll punish too hard. So that's a stronger move. You've got to, you know, that's up at 78 mile an hour club speed. You've got hold of that one, 113 ball speed, but you've got to work that little bit harder to do it. And so this is where you kind of picture out how much do I want to challenge you. So if you literally were, well, if you could have, you know, teenager getting bigger and stronger, well, you've got to go to the point where it's a little bit beyond ideal right now, because you don't want mum and dad to have to buy another set of clubs in 6 months' time. Or the other end of the scale, if someone's 65, 70-year-old, you want to make it easier for them to get the result out of, so there's some longevity there. For you, it's really a case of saying, okay, that you could make those work, but it's going to be very good. It's going to be good, bad.
Yeah, I think
consistency
is for me more important than making my best shot out of 10 a bit better.
Yeah. So we'll then go back to that.
Oh, that was the best one of the day.
Okay. So the swing before, I'm going to put down to a reaction to having held something heavier to swing, because we do adapt very quickly. Yeah. So human nature is to do that anyway. So that swing before was as if you were still swinging the heavier one, kind of heave at it from the top. And then the second one was that was that kind of, oh no, don't need to do that anymore, and back to a smoother tempo. And then, as you say, 78 club speed, 114 ball speed, okay, little bit of a fade, got the flight up, and just you're more balanced at that way.
Well, that's the first one I felt was a really nice strike on the club face, which is what I'm struggling with at the minute.
Okay. So watch one more of those. So essentially, by doing that test, we can see coming back to this that you're not having to fight it. So. Yes, in theory, you can make a heavier club work if you were, let's say, a little bit earlier in your golf career and improving vastly. We'd probably challenge you a little bit more.
That was nice as well.
But the difference going back to that one is that you're swinging the club rather than the other way around. Heavier one, you have to fight it, heave at it.
That's huge.
And that one's just, murdered. A little bit more club speed, 79 club speed. Struck really well. So,
let me take a photo of that too, because that would be quite a nice thing to say.
So you can see there, strike points right out the middle as well. I can switch to the other screen if you like as well.
Brilliant.
So that one's just a really efficient move. So club path, face to path, 1 degree and 0.4. So that's got a total shape of 2 foot. So it's just a very, very square hit.
I mean, what's going to amaze you is that I can hit a 7-iron 186 miles an hour, 186 yards. My driver will probably 15 yards.
Well, that one, so the total on that is more like landing on fairway.
Yeah. So
it will have a bit more of a skid. I mean, that one, hit very well, very efficient, 148 efficiency, so 170 carry. Your on-course average shot, I would say, I think if you've got a bit more weight to hit against, you often see actually you get a little bit more club speed because you can keep the pressure and keep accelerating. The club stays. If it's in one plane, you can move it more efficiently. So you're likely to pick up half a club instead of playing. I mean, you say 150, 155 with a 7-9. I mean, I'd look at that and go, well, why are you not playing for 160? But if you put a bit more force in and it goes offline, you're going to rein it back a little bit rather than free it up.
It's a trust thing.
Yeah.
But also, like, I mean, it's what, 20, 23 degrees in here. Air's still.
Yeah. There's no bunkers or rough or trees.
Yeah, there's no.
And that's sometimes we'll see players, you say, swing up because it's just a completely freed up swing. And then say when there's no real consequence on it. Sometimes you get people who just don't like being in these sort of environments, and on course will commit a little bit more. But I would say the kind of the average distance I'd be expecting you to play for would be more like that one. So, but you're at, some of the earlier swings were kind of 76, 77. Those last couple were 78, 79. So that's purely as you say, freedom, speed side of things. I want to check the lie on that as well and get hit one more. I'm going to put a little chalk line on this.
My coach thinks that my clubs are a bit too, because my hands are lowish.
Okay.
So he thinks they're a bit too, whatever that is.
Upright.
Yeah.
We'll see what it's like between address and impact.
Okay.
So you can actually standard address with the club head there, and still then level it off. So let's just put that basically invisible line vertical rather than the black line and marking the screen. So this will just leave me a little impression on your club face to see how neutral that lies. Yeah, so I'll do one more. That one, the line's pointing slightly towards the heel, which actually, if anything might suggest. If I catch the light right there, yes, you can see that line pointing just a little that way.
Yeah.
That would suggest, if anything, it's toe down. I'll do one more just to double check. Great, we'll just give that the one more. Okay. Okay. Nice and square. So a little towards the heel, but again, I'll show the camera here. Again, exactly the same line, just pointing a little bit towards the heel. So they're the opposite of two upright.
Okay.
I mean, not a lot. I mean, it's the kind of thing where you can use lie to semi-correct a bit of ball flight by because of where the clubs have got loft. The more upright it is, the more you right at the face points. The flatter, the more left. So if you've got if you had a tendency to overdraw, slightly flat's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
So technically, you could make these a little bit more upright. I guess in terms of, let's have a look at shot patterns. Because you're very neutral through, it's actually one where in an ideal world we'd probably face the path slightly open, if anything, slightly, say path 0.1 and face 1 degree open. So if anything, the flatter lie, if anything, is once we get a bit more weight on, which is just keeping the head there a little bit more rather than, keeping the head there a little bit more rather than letting you overpower it and kind of flip at it. If anything, with a bit more weight, it's just tending the face open, so bringing it up a little bit will just help it square in a little bit more. Okay. It's a fine tune. It's not major. It's probably a degree at most.
Cool.
But small fine. So what we can see with this is that the guys at Cobra did a good job for you. It's a very appropriate shot.
Just say that directly into the camera over and over again.
The guys at Cobra did a good job. But it's nice to see because the people often say, "Oh, is it good for you when when someone doesn't do a good job fitting. Actually, it's bad for everybody if someone does a bad job.
Yeah.
Because if someone does a bad job, someone loses all trust in it and then never comes back to it.
Also, what percentage of people are coming to see you?
It's very niche. Yeah, no,
so you don't want 99% of golfers to have badly fitted clubs, do you?
I mean, it's nice having work to do.
Yeah.
But equally speaking, if lots of people have bad experience, then the problem is that sullies their opinions of fitting full stop.
Yeah, sure.
And then they never come to us or anyone else.
Yeah.
So the better job people do, the more people are inclined to get fitted, and then we're just the nth degree of it in a completely independent
So
area.
for the irons, we're basically just thinking maybe a touch heavier.
A little bit of
and
weight,
everything else
yeah.
is pretty within the sort of margins of.
Yeah, and I think if we were starting completely from scratch, I'd then be saying, okay, well, and this is where kind of taking into account of where the loft is, where your lowest loft is, i.e. at 24 degrees. Worth having a little bit of a look at the flight on the 6-iron, but whilst it's not moonball and high, because you've only go 1 iron lower than that. It's not like if you had a 4-iron in these, which would be more of a 2-iron loft.
I've got a 5, but I just don't use it because otherwise I end up with a load of clubs with the same distance because it goes about as far as the hybrid, and I prefer the hybrid.
And that's really where, for that, I say, taking it into account in terms of loft, 24 being old school 4-iron, it's a hard club to hit. And so your 6-irons there, your 5-iron will be at 21, that's old 3-iron loft. And then the problem is if you take, from where this is spinning at 4,500 revs on a nice clean flighted one, 6 is likely to be 3.8, 5 is going to be down at 3,000. Well, that's 3 would spin, and that's where my 2-iron is. Useless for most players.
Yeah.
So, and that's where we kind of have to, if we take into account the lofts and go, right, you go from 24 degrees to 40, well, the A wedge is 49, pitch wedge at 44. Within that range of lofts, there's enough flight there. The 6 is going to be strong, no doubt about it. It's going to be a fairly strong flight. But actually, on a par 3 into a bit of wind, that can be really quite useful. As long as you've got something that you can then flight up and carry, the 5-iron, that's going to come out low and probably not carry much beyond the 6-iron, certainly off the ground. So, if we were starting from scratch, I would be looking at having, it would probably be, instead of 6 to pitch and approach edge, 5 to pitch, equivalent. Can we get a head that naturally kicks the ball up a little bit more? But there's enough flight there to be fine. And do you need to invest several hundred more pounds in a set of clubs that goes a few yards shorter and a bit higher?
Yeah.
Not really.
Sure.
When for a few quid a club we can reweight them. So that's certainly very, very, very good option. Is just that little bit of swing weighting. Obviously, we'll look at grips and things once we've done all the other bits. But I'll just cross-reference to that. So literally added a swing weight point on. So what would be interesting to see? I'll make the same change on the 6. It actually doesn't need quite as much of a change, and just see where that picture flight is. And then that gives us the top end of the irons, and we can look at other bits from there. To get that spot on, for any of the brands where they've got limited options to use, it's not commercially viable for them to have all of these shafts on because they'd have to stock them.
Yeah.
To get it where it really is a very, very appropriate spec is less likely than likely. So quite often we'll find we can change a shaft and tighten up dispersion. Again, it's the amount that's going to make it a viable option to change or not. But okay, so let's get a look at where the 6-iron ball flight is. So did you and Alex meet from the comedy side of things?
Yeah, and then I moved to near where he lives. And he was one short for a golf trip, so that's where it all began.
just going to put a fraction more on that. Any courses you've enjoyed playing, particularly? Or type styles, of course?
Good question. Played Loch Lomond. That was
a hardship.
That was something else.
Yeah.
Gleneagles Queen's course was.
It's meant to be beautiful.
I think if you're like 18 handicapper, I think it's probably the best course in the world you could play. It's really suited to a sort of bogey golfer.
Yep.
Challenging but achievable. There's one in London. There's one near London called Wyke Green.
Oh yeah.
Just just off an A road. It's really nice.
Play that. It's there. Some of those holes are incredibly tight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Buckinghamshire. Really lovely. Oh, that was off. They're all very much towards the hosel.
Okay. Let's go. Let's do. Don't worry about how too much. Just get a nice rhythm tempo. There you go. A little bit of help me just putting that a little bit more weight on. But what's quite interesting here is we're seeing that launch angle 12, 13 degrees, spin 3-2. So that's quite a, and that may be a little on the stronger side, it's a little bit drawn, but that's quite a punchy flight.
Right.
First one earlier went faced a little bit open, so got a bit more flight to it, but that's then back up to where the 7-9 is, and then square it off. And so it's quite interesting quite how strong that flight is with that club.
That was better.
Lovely swing. So 122 ball speed. Yeah, so similar. I mean, that one nuked 186. So 14 launch, 3.5 spin. So that's your very, very much bottom end of loft on the iron. So if you were, that's a great flight in the links or into a bit of wind. The difficulty comes where, and say, if you were to go to a 5-iron, you're going to be down. That swing's going to be 11, 12 launch and maybe even under 3,000 on spin, which makes it just a waste of time on 99% of shots, other than blowing a gale on a links course.
Yeah.
Which is why it just hasn't been in the bag. If you think how well that's hit, 81, 82 mile an hour ball speed, great contact, and that's just got enough height to be useful. So, it's. I think that bit when we get to the hybrid, it's going to be quite an interesting one to kind of look at, right, for the courses you play regularly. Whether it's the par threes and things around the. I mean, that one's absolutely murdered, but probably around that kind of 185, 190 yard distance. Do you have something at land soft?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think I very rarely land anything that far and it stays. But I was in a situation where my 5-iron, my hybrid, I had another hybrid and my 5-wood all basically went the same distance.
Yeah.
And
suboptimal.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then you just stand there going, well, which one do I hit? Yeah. Or you end up, you'll just take the one club that you just feel you might hit straight. So definitely, and we could see from adding that little bit of weight to that, definitely that little bit heavier on the head, definitely tightens the strike up, definitely allows you to freewheel a little bit more ultimately.
Yeah.
And that's very much a good change with the irons. That gives me a nice sort of marker for the top end of the irons. Did you want a water or anything?
I'd love a water, yeah.
That'd be grab great. One of those for you. Or through a wall. Yeah. But yeah, no, it's nice to see. Oh, I've got to remember which one was which.
I don't actually think it matters hugely because I can swap them around in the app.
Okay, I'm pretty certain that one's going to be 7 because that was the one from the. Let's say something that we can do either with lead tape or through the top of the grip, or if we change grips, that's doable as well. But based on how sensitive you are to those changes, that's where if we're looking at a bigger grip, then we need to make absolutely certain we don't counterweight with a heavier grip weight. So, lovely. Wedges are an easy bit at the end. We'll leave
Okay.
those till you're most fatigued. But again, from what we've seen with those, 100% that is why they are hard work. You know, where that weight swings really nicely for you, there's a good amount of control on those swings. We're still a long way from where those are.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time we'd end up going a bit heavier in wedges because when you get to finesse swings, there's less acceleration. You can use the weight to drop it into the back of the ball, but you're normally looking at about 10%, maybe or 10 to 15% of a change in weight. So we might be looking at a 110, 115 gram shaft rather than 125.
Yeah.
So that and at that balance as well, they're really head heavy. So that's where consistency of strike, divot depth, face control probably won't feel as good on those as you might expect to get out of them. But certainly that one where you kind of catapult, catches a bit heavy, chunk it over right. Would be prime candidates for those. Or
Yeah, it does go,
bunkers,
they do go right.
difficult to get divot depth
Yep.
in bunkers, so can definitely help with that.
Cool.
So I'm gonna go top end and then work our way back towards the irons.
Yep.
So the LTDs have been really good heads this year.
Yeah.
Done a very, very good job with them. Particularly, I mean, the LS has been particularly good for. I'll take that off. I'll store that somewhere. I know which one. Particularly good for high speed, and they did it a couple of years back with the FH series. But all the heads this year have been consistent performers. So I think you said earlier, this one was it flighting it. You said,
This I'm happy with
or has
this.
that one been performing
Yeah.
well?
Do you need to weigh it or anything? Or have you already
Oh,
done
we've
that?
got
haven't you?
those, yeah. So let me know if you want me higher or lower on the tee.
Probably a bit higher.
Just click that into. So I can go down or up with that. And so general shot pattern, is there a trend? Is there anything with this that you'd be looking, you'd say, actually, I feel like I could improve? Or is it more just distance?
No, because my shot is a fade.
Yeah.
My miss is when I move my weight forward too early and a big block right. So I know the fault when the fault occurs.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty confident with it at the moment.
Okay. So it's always, normally, when I'm pretty confident with it, it goes, it goes in the military style, but that's good. That's a nice swing. So I'll put one, thank you very much.
A bit off the
A
top.
little high on the face, but good line through. You can't really call you a blog bad golf when you say that.
I know. So many people say that to me.
You're going to have to be called the intermediate golf.
Yeah.
Competent golf, I guess.
That was way off the top.
It's the tee popping out. I'll put the tee in a little bit lower. I think I was just getting a little bit high. Right. Okay. Came over it a little bit of a pull, but nothing too major. Okay, I think that was a bit of a reaction to the ones that went high.
Yeah.
One more would be great. Slight pull, slight, but great. Okay, good. So, actually, much like the iron, really pretty good. I mean, the first hit was absolutely relative. There was a bit more club speed on some of the later ones. So, gone from 80, 90, 93. That one, really efficient flight, very good. Upper mid launch, lower mid spin. I've put it on an optimizer and put it on carry and total. So you can see here you got upper mid launch, okay, out the bottom end a bit on spin, but then actually makes it really efficient for total distance. Because it launches high, you can see the height is still in an optimal band.
Yeah.
So that lower spin just gives it a bit more kick on when it lands. So very, very efficient. And then with the stronger swing, that last one there, it's a little on the lower side. I mean, what it's doing really well, let me go out of this now. What you're getting very well out of this club is very good ball speed, bar the one that got a little higher on the face, which is fair enough. The ball speed consistency is great. Again, somewhere Coburn, one of the Callaway's in particular this year, have been very good for that. Your action suits the driver because you hit up on it. So it's a very driver-friendly action. Club path, very neutral. Angle of attack, a little bit up. So that's exactly where we'd want it to be. So it's really a case of just tightening up, maybe kind of optimizing launch and spin a little bit, get as consistent as we can.
Well, I've only just moved it down to standard. It was
Okay.
it was at 11.5 draw setting, but then I just thought, no, I could get a bit more distance, and I'm hitting up on it now as I used to hit down on it. So.
Got it. Yeah. So was it starting to stall a little bit? Did it feel like it was just taking off a bit high, or just felt a bit more yardage from lower loft?
It was a bit. I think it was just a bit slicey, but I just thought I'm now in control of, to an extent, coming like that as opposed to like that.
Downright, yeah.
So I wasn't needing to crank it in order to get the ball in the air.
Got it. And that first one absolutely backs that up. You can see, you've got, say, more than enough launch. Those ones coming out a bit lower, even though there's more ball speed, haven't gained carry but have then run. So if we can find that sort of probably 14 odd launch and 2,000, 2.2 on spin. Don't want to go too low on spin so it falls out of the sky.
Yeah.
I think, like the irons, I don't see it being a big change. It's whether does something else just help to get a little bit more consistency of that flight, or is that just a case of saying it's a driver, it's a long club, and potentially if we can clean up the timing with the irons, that might just knit this together as well. If you stop having to manage the club face with the irons and start just being turn back, turn through and collected, it can declutter a little bit.
Yeah.
So what I shall do is I'll use, I'm just going to double check. I might just use that head to start with. Yeah, because that's just actually I'll use that head to start with.
Sure.
I can take it off and put it back together. Just to see if we, like with the irons, if we change any of the setup elements, does that just help just to find squarer and just a slightly more consistent strike pattern? But it's good. It's certainly much like the irons. I mean, it makes sense that it's not going to be far off if the irons are a good setup and they complement each other well as part of the bag. Then we should see good performance from this. Drop into the head. This will just let me interchange some of the shafts in. Holds the screw in.
So they're not all the same. I guess they wouldn't.
No, it's like mobile phone chargers. Yeah. We've got a universal system that we can use, where it's got different adapters depending on the club head itself.
Yeah.
So. Right. But with this one, it's got at the bottom of here, it's got a hole into the head.
Right.
I do not want the rubber band. You can get it out, but don't particularly want the rubber band going into. So kind of like the irons. I'm going to just push shaft weight up a little bit because lighter. I definitely don't think lighter because I want you to be in a position where you can stand and deliver a bit, not have to steer at it.
Sure.
So to be nice and positive. So only a few grams heavier, but something that's structurally going to feel a little bit more solid, swing a little bit stronger. just take a fraction of weight off that. If it'll come off. Oh, that's a little tight. I'm going to use that.
I've got the Cobra one if you want the Cobra one. I guess they're all the same.
Different torques.
Right.
So some of them, like the Callaway one, historically has been quite a firm torque.
Yeah.
And it sort of feels like you're going to strip the screw when it clicks. But, so how do you get into comedy?
A long time ago.
Laugh, but yeah.
Yeah, just started doing sort of open mic nights above a pub.
Yeah.
And then it becomes that necessity. You're like, well, how can I get paid to do this?
Yeah. That's a bit like for me doing this. You have to do something if you enjoy doing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if other people enjoy what you do, it's quite a good drug, that, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I could hang around a golf club all day. Just love it.
Where do you play most of your golf?
At Wickham Heights.
Oh, okay,
Yeah. Cool. I've never played a non-standard shaft before.
So normally, what you'll tend to get from the stock shaft is something quite user friendly.
Yeah.
A little bit of responsiveness. I mean, most brands will have a affiliation with with UST for Cobra. They've always done UST and Fujikura. They've worked with a lot. Ping were always Grafalloy years back. Zilla, and now they make their own. But most sort of partner up because it's good marketing for both companies. Okay. And I think the thing with this is whether, by pushing weight up, so does it allow you to be a little more positive? And say not to the point you've got to stand and give an absolute smash, but.
Oh, that was horrible. I think this tee might be a bit low now.
Okay, no problem. Let's bring it up a little bit. Okay, I'm going to go a little bit more. Good ball speed. So where we're seeing these ones go is that we've got a 95, but it's starting to see that one then reined back a little bit. So club speed crept up and then dropped off a little bit, and that one's just started to build up. So it doesn't always go to form that lighter equals faster. Actually, you can lose a bit of speed with light because I've got one in my pocket.
I'm just going to see what speed, what height that tee is compared to one.
Which ones do you use?
Orange, the orange plastic ones.
Yeah. So that one I've got one here for you.
Oh,
So
great.
that one's going to be just a fraction. It's going to be more closer. I don't want to go too high though. We'll see where that goes. So it's going to push that weight up. So that one's at 57, 58. Current one's 54, 55. It's going to get it just over 60. So whenever a shaft has a 5 or a 50 or a 60 on it, 65, that's a general category between. So a 50 or 55 is somewhere between 50 and 60.
Right.
60 or 65 is somewhere between 60 and 70.
Right.
So you generally find a lot of them are in the upper half of those categories.
Yeah.
So when you're trying to find ones in the bottom half, they're few and far between. So this one's at 62, so it's a couple of grams.
So what is it, and what is it in terms of flex? Is it just regular?
So this one's a regular. And the flex is one of those ones where it's been over Oh, the keyboard got stuck. Thanks. Flex has been kind of over-egged as how important it is over the years. So the keyboard's just... It doesn't do as much as it's more feel than anything. You know, flex range is about 3 to 5% of the flex of the shaft. Okay. So it isn't necessarily, well, I say necessarily, it isn't a key factor in shaft performance.
Yeah.
It's just been, because there's always something on the shaft to talk about, it's been seen as majorly important.
Oh, that came way off the top.
So I'm going to, I think I'm going to take, that's gone a little heavy. So what happened there, it started to get behind and under. So neither of those were timed that clean. So let's take a little bit of that weight back off. And again, like the irons, they start to go left. It doesn't take much, so that's 4 or 5 grams. I'll take it back a little bit again. There are some, we can still just get them, but they are right on their last legs from a supply point of view.
But certainly that Stealth Plus is going to take some beat.
Can you put your hand up? Just as if you're playing face. Hand side. Just like that. Yeah, that's soft. So if you do it again.
Okay. Go around that way. Okay. Let's just... So do you get to travel and play much? I say travel, play different courses much?
Yeah, so we'll try and play a different one every month for the channel. Go away once a year to Spain or Portugal.
Yeah.
We leave in a couple of weeks for that, go to Amendoeira. But
No, is that the one where there was Faldo in a corner?
Yeah, that's the one, yeah. We played there a few times. It's quite good for groups because it's all on site and it's accommodation and stuff.
Yeah, I used to spend every January down in the Algarve when I was
lovely.
trying to play full time, which was great. And then you'd come back at the end of January and it would snow, and then you'd think, that was a month well spent. But, yeah, it's a lovely part of the world. Okay, right. So, okay, so getting it back under 60 is definitely a better weight, but that one's just letting you pop it up a little bit more. So, a bit like with the irons, once we slept up over 100 odd grams, shaft-wise, it started to get stuck, and then
These could just be swing faults.
They could be, but I don't think so, because it's quite definite. So what we're seeing is the moment we kick up above threshold, as you turn through, obviously mirror image, it gets in here, and the only way of salvaging it is to stand up on it and flip it through. When you drop back and weight, because the club stays out, out in front of you, stays with your body turned better, you're able to stay in posture and keep turning through. And that's where the left comes out. It comes that stand up.
Yeah.
And then on course, the next one's a salvage, and then it flips right.
Right.
So it's better, for you, it's definitely better to very slightly lighter than too heavy, because at least you can make that work.
So the shaft it came with was what weight? 50?
54, 55.
Okay. And this one is?
58.
Okay.
So not vast differences, and certainly what you have is definitely very playable. It's whether, if you're looking at saying, right, taking the game forward, it's whether that little bit more weight allows you to commit a bit more and not have to place the club on the ball and just hit through it. Fine tune, definitely. Club head's certainly doing a good job from a flight point of view. Just back to that one.
I think this might be me, not the shaft.
Yeah. So that one was a slightly quick. I'm just going to tee just popped up a little. Okay. Again, swing line's good. 1.5 on path. Angle of attack's good. Swing. Yeah, and so once at that sort of weight, okay, face a bit open, but actually at that weight, you look nice and balanced through the shot. Face has got a little bit open, so it's gone left, but actually that's just then a case, I think, the more you kind of start to unwind and let it go, it straightens off, and it's a nice strong flight to it. So, a little lower on the face?
Yeah, that felt better. I mean, it's gone way left. But.
Just going to look at a couple of the earlier. Yeah, that was the first one with it. Okay. It's whether what I can see with this one is that the stronger swing, I mean, that's the strongest swing, and then that's squared off. So again, I'm going to put your current one back in. Is that just asking you to be on it a little bit too much?
Yeah.
It's like when we went to the 110-gram iron shaft. The best one would be fine, but the average one then becomes a little bit challenging. Put this exactly back as it was. And one of the things with it is it's not a case of just being used to something, because by trying the other bits, it kind of almost it takes out any of the intuitive kind of compensations, because you're not just used to swinging it. So if it just swings really well when we go back to it, we go, okay, it works well.
Yeah.
I'll put that back on once we decide on. Okay, so getting a little, so it's going left because you're just getting a little bit across it, just slightly out to in on it, but good contact. And what's good with that head's keeping the spin in check well for you. So that one, whilst it's gone left and faded, it hasn't gone on a weak flight. So that one, able to square that through. So I think this is kind of like where the irons are. I don't think we need to. This gives you a driver so that you don't have to force. As long as you free it up and kind of allow your arms to swing through, comes through quite easily. If you give it a bit more, then you can. If you were trying to give it a bit of extra distance and went to give it a hit, you're likely to overpower it.
Yeah.
So it's one where if you were on a long drive hole, it's about moving faster rather than hitting harder.
Yeah.
If you are someone who is more of a hitter in the swing, then that's where the slightly heavier option would be a good thing, because it would give you a bit more guts to drive against. Whereas that, as long as you keep it fluid and yeah, so like that was just turning through faster and still just letting the hands and arms come through. That's then when that works very well. So as long as you don't hit at it, it works well.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's a very efficient flight. So much like the irons, the shaft just suits you really well. So if you were someone who was a bit more aggressive, that would be a little bit more comfortable. But it makes you have to work it a little bit.
Well, I'd say I probably would swing my driver about 90, 85%.
Yeah. And that then complements. I'm going to put the rubber bits back.
Sure.
That then complements that very well. And what the Cobra driver is doing really well for you is it's a really good ball flight. The head's really good for launch and spin. So it's a very, very, very good and consistent trajectory. So once you get that bit of launch, actually those ones are that one there's absolutely fine. It's where you turn the loft down, I wouldn't want it any lower. But equally speaking, the better you hit it, the freer you move, you're going to pick up a little bit of launch and flight. And then rather than it maybe kind of just falling out the sky a bit and then running, it'll then stay up and carry that a little bit further. So you could argue for winter golf, you could argue to put it in the slightly higher loft.
So maybe put up to 11 and a half. That's not a bad idea.
But the moment you get the run out on the ground.
And would you put it on the standard or the draw setting, or does it not really make any odds?
I would say, well, if you lofted up one, then just the standard rather than draw, because that automatically does draw it a little bit.
Right.
Based on the miss being a little bit to the left, you could argue for the draw setting. There's a bit of me that would say you swing it well enough to keep it on the neutral. And I'd almost rather, that's quite a safe shot shape.
Yeah.
At least it's not getting away from you, it's not kicking and going hard.
Yeah.
The only reason I hesitate, it kind of depends a bit on where you are, how you approach the game. If you're someone who likes to get things right, absolutely leave it on the standard setting, because the better you swing it, the straighter it's going to go.
Yeah.
If you're the game's hard enough, make it as easy as possible, then if you continue to see that little bit of a bleed left, then just stick it on the draw setting. It doesn't make a VAR, it's a degree and a half.
Yeah.
So it's not massive. But I'd err to rewarding you for the good swings and protecting the bad swing.
Sure.
Based on where you're actually, again, you're only your face to target's half a degree offline. So it's just because the path's moved 3.5 right that it's bled left a little bit. But no, driver's definitely a good setup. And this is the thing, you could spend hundreds of, and even if this was let's go back a few, I can say an F8 head and it's giving you the same results, you could spend several £100s and get nothing extra.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cobra has been, I think, a bit of an underrated brand. And they got known for colourful club heads and Ricky's orange fairway.
I think the F9 is one of the best drivers probably of the last 10, 15 years. For the price especially.
It was really good. Yeah, it was.
I don't think if you were still using that today, you would have lost much in terms of the technological gains of other companies.
No, I think every now and then a brand gets it right, and we really did then. And with the Sub-Zero, or Sub-Zero is probably not the equivalent, the low spin equivalent. It just 105 mile an hour and up. It had an extra gear in it. It really performed at higher speeds, and the LTD is, it's probably a little bit better across the face, a little bit better off centre. But the thing is with drivers, they've been limited since 2003, so out of the middle they can't make them any better.
Yeah.
So do you want this off a low tee or?
No, that's fine.
So you're really looking at how good are they when you miss it.
Yes.
Solid. Generally, fairway wood, like fairway
I
wood.
don't use them that often, but when I do use them, I like them. And if I misstrike it, it's not the end of the world because it's going to chunk it forward 130 yards. So,
Yeah.
I mean, weirdly, my miss of these is straight right.
Okay.
But, you know, I quite like them. It's just the nature of the course at my club. There's not many tees I would use them on.
Yeah. And would it be a case of, as a fairway would, again, the course you play out regularly, would that be a similar thing? It's just not a club you use that often?
I'd probably hit this once around, and it's the same shot every time on the same hole. But it's useful for other clubs. But it's hybrid or driver off the tees for me. Oh, that came off the toe.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so where there's potential with this one, potential on it, being the same shaft as the driver and being 2.5 inches shorter, actually this is then lighter than the driver shaft. So one of the upside of those, it's not too heavy. You're not having to work hard with it. But again, when you put a strong move on, does it get over, and is that previous shot actually a result of putting a stronger move on and losing the club rather than it dropping in and letting you drive against it?
Yeah.
That's really, if anything, where I see it. I think you know that one was first one was hit dead down the line, slight fade, really nice. But then the timing of the strike started to taper off a little bit rather than tightening up. So this is then where you'd not ordinarily see a bit of a progression up in shaft weight from driver to, certainly wouldn't drop it, but driver to fairway, fairway to hybrid, then hybrid into the irons. There's a general graduation of weight heavier as the shaft length gets shorter. So I think that's really where, as your game improves, having a little bit more guts to this is likely to make it slightly more reliable. And as a club that you're actually wanting to send a reasonable distance, potentially this one's going to make you have to kind of rein back and steer it a little bit too much. So I'll grab our head rather than pulling that one apart for this one. It's the max, isn't it?
I think it is, yeah.
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 Yeah. Okay. So 55. Start with this. So do you have a sort of particular style, comedy-wise? Are you more observational? Are you, or just?
Yeah, I guess sort of anecdotal stuff. Yeah. Telling stories, that sort of thing.
Let's get the right screw.
So this is a slightly heavier shaft. Is it?
Yeah, this is where I think a little bit more. We might need to just. There we go. tiny tolerances on internal damages. Yeah, so a little bit more weight, again, as it's shorter, really to keep the same amount of energy moving this as the driver and the irons, and in principle, keeping that as consistent as we can.
Why doesn't that one do the click click sound?
Because that one's not one of the torque ones.
Oh, right.
Because some of them end up with these, they can sort of slip a little bit.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it just means having to be very conscious of not overdoing it, stripping it. So just want to make sure it doesn't feel wildly. Okay, there we go. So this one we have gone just up over 60 grams. It would have got that last time. I'm just going to change the tag on this so it actually matches the. Am I going? Listen. Keyboard issues. Okay, thanks. Okay. A little faded, but good solid hit. Okay. Okay, so definitely better with a little bit more weight. So again, there's that drop and change of direction in. So again, you can just keep going with it and not then overpower and drag it. So I think the problem with that shaft weight is that if you're trying to send it distance, inevitably there's a bit of effort in the swing because you're visualizing a longer shot, and then you overpower and drag it over. Whereas with that one, as you transition, the club drops in and then lets you keep going with it. So a little bit left, but the quality of strike on all three of those was right there, and that's 220.
Yeah.
But on good going ball flight, so that's definitely taking the weight up. I don't want to push it much more. It's about 10% heavier.
Okay.
So we're just over 60 grams. I'm going to just change that up a little bit. Just where the weight is a bit. I don't want to go heavier though. That's a good base point. Get these out of the way. This is one of those ones that says 50 on it, weighs 60.
Right.
It's got the weight a bit more down the bottom end. That last one's quite even all the way through.
Yeah.
No, that's okay. Highly technical, that man. So I don't know what is going on. This keyboard is playing.
Maybe
do
missed
something.
a horrible shot anyway.
Okay. Okay, I'll watch one more there.
Oh.
Yeah, so with that, with the weight down the bottom end, that starts to look like you and the club head are on different tangents. So
Yeah.
just not computing. Whereas with the other one, you could see it dropped in, then everything moved through in one go.
Okay.
That one looks like the club head's quite detached,
Oh,
sort of
right.
separate. And then that's when the big misses come in, because you've got to really salvage the bottom end on it.
Yeah.
Which makes the club face very volatile. Which again, that ties in with taking iron shafts or even balance through.
Does it show you where I'm hitting it on the club face or not?
Yeah, yeah, we can look at that. So that last
Yeah.
one's a little bit of the heel, centered and a bit lower. And that, if we go back to those, you've got middle, middle. That was, I think, the first one actually with this last one. Yeah, but the 2 or 3, I think there's one, the last one on this bit of data, yeah, was the first one because I was having trouble with the keyboard, are all middled out. So much better contact points with the other shaft. And it's not, I'll go back to it, shouldn't be, just a coincidence element to it. But we have got a consistency of pattern with how the shaft setup is in driver, irons, and in this one from a weight position point of view. So the fact that there is a definite correlation there. Okay, a little deep on it, but it's the same shot pattern as the others. It's a little bit of a leak left, which is the same as the driver, but a much better connection through the ball. It doesn't look like the club head's got out of sync. Yeah. And there's the contact again. So same shot, a little bit of a leak left, that we can work on, but immediately contact's there, and out of each of these we're seeing just bleeding a little left, same. That one was the first thing that we ignore that one. And actually then back to this one, not struck, but the same kind of shot pattern. So it's a much more consistent, I go to that, just to show those. They're down the same track each time. So, and this is where you'd use potentially the draw setting on the hosel, for example. I want to do a very small change versus this one. Just to see if we pull the weight back down a couple of grams, does that just help us square it up? Get rid of that. That's going to be heavier. I was about to say, what are you doing this weekend? But getting slightly ahead of myself.
What am I doing this weekend? What this weekend coming?
Yeah.
Oh, gigs in Manchester.
Okay.
So what's this? There's this slightly lighter.
Just taking the weight down a little bit, yeah. Thank you. Okay. So by dropping those couple of grams back down but keeping it away from getting tip heavy, that's just letting you get the face a little bit squarer. So both of those are, I mean, face to target is absolutely dead square. 2.2 face to path, the previous one 0.0, whereas the previous club was 1 degree face to club path out to in, but 3 degrees, 3.5 open. Those are 2 degrees out to in and 1 degree open. So just losing that little bit, still sitting heavier than that, but losing that little bit of weight is just letting you get the toe back through.
So the difference between this and the original is what one, how many grams?
5 grams.
5 grams.
Yeah, still 10% the shaft weight, give or
Yeah.
take. But it's, and again, it's the kind of thing where if you're fitting for what's going to be really forgiving, very easy to get away, it's for a club like this, which is, say, it's a distance tool, where essentially your game is moving slightly beyond that one, and that you actually need that little bit of weight to use and to benefit from the technique being in a good place. It's very, very good. It's not like you're, balances all over the place to throwing it, and we just got to find some way of finding the club face on the back of the ball. The problem with that now is you must have to rein it back to not overpower it.
Right.
Which is fine on an iron shot, but on a distance swing, it's the better side of too heavy, for sure, where you've got to fight it to get the best out of it. But actually just going up a little bit more in weight, dynamically you're bringing the driver and the fairway a little more into line from a momentum point of view.
So how much does this shaft cost?
That one actually is a very, very good value one. So it's an aftermarket VA Composites. So they're you might call them a boutique brand. They're not available via a Cobra or a Titleist or a TaylorMade pack.
Yeah.
They only operate through club fitters. But that one is their kind of entry level one. So they've developed a line. Most of the aftermarket shafts are £200 plus, £150 plus, because they've got to be very good grade materials to withstand a lot of the twisting forces and to make them that much better than the entry level ones. Whereas this one, they've basically gone, it's still good grade materials, but they've gone price point at 100, 120, so that it's, they call it last line of defense before a stock shaft, essentially something that's a better quality product, still an aftermarket, good grade, Japanese made product, but at a very realistic price point.
Sure.
And then one of the ways they do that is by not loading up the tip and loading up actually allowing it to have a little bit more recovery and a bit more kick.
Yeah.
Which actually really suits fairway woods. Drivers, you want something structurally a little bit more stable because the heads are that much bigger, and it puts a lot more gearing and torsional forces on it. So going to something that a little bit higher grade helps to hang on to the head.
Yeah.
In the fairway wood, you think the centre of gravity, tip of the shaft's here. I'll stick it onto there. Tip of the shaft's there, and the centre of gravity is basically there. You've actually not got that much gearing around it. Whereas if you go, I'll grab your driver head, tip of the shaft's here, centre of gravity is twice as far away. So there's that much more rotational force on it that the shaft's got to withstand. On a fairway, we want that recovery, we want that little bit of pop to get to the flight. But essentially, it's kind of making, you can argue, well, is it making it harder to use? Technically, slightly, but it actually allows you to put a better move on and not lose the club. So that actually should give you a little bit more, it's a bit more continuity of actually where the driver and the iron setup is. But you're getting a nice flight out of it. They're 11.5, 10.5, 11.5 launch, mid threes on spin. It's got 66 feet, so 22 yards flight height. It's high enough. It's got a bit of go to it. So there's enough carry, a couple of 100 yards carry, 20 yards run out. The stronger drives were 255 odd. And that one, if you couple of miles an hour more club speed, you're going to be up 225, maybe pushing 230 on a stronger one that runs out. So we'd look for about the 25 yard gap between driver and three wood. So 220 to 240, 45 for a kind of quieter swing. So you start to gain a bit of confidence. You start to free it up a little bit. Club speed goes with it, and that's where driver becomes 250 plus, and the fairway's nearer the 230 mark.
Yeah.
But all of those numbers in terms of efficiency and ball speed and launch and spin are in a really good place.
Great.
But just a little bit more guts to the shaft helps to.
Actually, had to come here to find out I'm better at golf than I thought.
Yeah. I think so. Technique-wise, club path at 2 degrees is very little. It's a very orthodox delivery, and so a lot of the time it's okay. We see quite significantly higher club paths further offline, but equally speaking, it's the synchronization that really if that timing goes off, then you're not bottoming out the same point each time.
Yep.
And so for you, the 3-wood, a really strong move is the one you smother right. But rather than the one that you line drive up the middle of the fairway with a slight fade,
Sure.
which is the same as the driver. So actually it's just bringing it into line, so the same quality of swing with the driver and the 3-wood produce the same result.
Yeah.
But previously that might have been a better setup and the driver might have been harder work. So it's kind of as you develop through your game and improve technically, that just rewards you a little bit more for
Right.
just
So would
doing
you just
that.
immediately try the same one in the 5-wood?
Yeah, what is I'll pop it onto, actually I've got the fibre to deliver. I'll pop that on as well. And reason being, okay, a lot of the pros go a little heavier in 5-wood because they play them a bit shorter, but actually, we don't need to make it any harder to use than it is, and we want just the loft. So
And
it's
it'd be-
different flying.
is it exactly the same shaft? It's not a shorter.
Would go a little shorter for
Yeah.
us just because we'd have to have
Yeah.
a few more on the wall. So I can change the head weight slightly to suit, and maybe just say grip it down a centimetre or so. But let me just actually, I can just reference the swing weight. And again, from a head point of view, it's giving you a good stable launch and spin performance. Can't multitask to save my life. Okay.
Just going to nip the loo while you put that.
Of course,
together.
Owen, if there's,
Tell you what, I'll just
do
move that.
a naked gun.
Just on the left there.
Doing really well. Grab a water. Grab a glass of water. Still a little surreal, this, isn't it? Must be in Windsor now, I guess. Yeah, so actually because of where the flight is, this is also another one we say, okay, you could, technically there might be heads that hit it a little a little higher launch, but because what you have is performing with a good ball speed
Yeah.
and a very solid ball flight. You don't go, oh yeah, for a degree more launch, let's change head.
Yeah.
So this one, just grip it a centimetre down.
Okay.
That's the 5-wood head on. Okay, a little turn. Okay, maybe don't worry about gripping it down. It's just to manage balance of it, but that looks fine. I think that was a bit of a reaction. That was just perfect swing line. That was just a bit of a reaction to one that went right.
The fleur-de-lis.
But I think, to me, what that shows me is that you're responding to seeing it go in different directions. Because again, path is 0.4 there.
Right.
So if I were
So what am I using to respond?
to try not to, I think just swing.
Yeah.
Just two turns. I think where you see the flight go off there, your hands are just finding it square. Okay. It's fetching. Let me just change.
This is probably the club I've hit the least.
Okay.
I may have only hit 30 shots with
Got
that, including the range, so
Is that
it's not as grooved.
Is that because it's just not one you felt?
I just never need it.
Because part of it with the bag setup, and this is where it would be interesting actually to see where that one gets to, because 5-wood and this are the same loft. So the element of it would be interesting to see where this gets to and what sort of flight.
Yeah.
Because the differentiation between the two would normally be that from the head style, you've generally got at the same loft, you've got iron hybrid fairway wood.
Yeah.
So if we were in the States and you're playing your typical Arizona course where it's all through the air, water hazards, all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
then the 5-wood's going to carry it further, land it softer.
Yeah.
But the shaft's longer, so there's more margin of error, less margin of error from a timing point of view. Although having said that, you just stood up, nuked the 3-wood repeatedly.
Yeah.
So there's not an issue with that. But the hybrid being the shorter shaft, so your 5-wood's at 42 inches, this one's at 42 inches shorter. In principle, a bit more iron-like, but makes it,
Oh, that was crap.
in theory, easier to control. So the miss is likely to be less of a miss. So if you take that one, for example, not struck, but pretty straight. Yeah, so solid contact. Okay, yeah, so what's interesting there, you're at, your 3-wood is carrying 200, running 220. That one's just gone 200. Just kind of where we'd look for it to be. We'd want one running out to where the other's carrying to and then running out. So the driver's then carrying 225 odd, which is just longer than the 3-wood, and then running out to. So you've got that run out, carry, run out, carry, run out progression.
Yeah.
And where that one, the flight is, there's enough spin to give you a bit of control when it lands. So yes, the launch angle's 11 to 12 degrees on a 5-wood's more to be 13, 13 and a half, so you're going to kick it up a bit more. They're going to basically go the same kind of distance, maybe 5 yards more with the 5-wood total.
Yeah.
And it's really a case of, is this just going to be more consistent for you? And the last two would give me my answer, really. So, you've hit that little bit of a fade, which you're hitting with the fairway, you're hitting with the driver. Those last two that was just hit stronger, but 11.5 launch, 3.9 on spin, 11.8 launch, 4,000 on spin. It's the same shot. Just, you hit that one 2 miles an hour faster, so it went 5 yards further.
Yeah.
And the other bit that's interesting, with that in hand, you go back to being a little more on top and a little more squeezed, like the irons. So you could take a view in it to say, well, if you've got both, if you wanted to, again, that swings nicely, and we'll do the same kind of double check, but you could set the 5-iron up, match shaft up to have it there as a, if you were to go and play a bigger, longer course and got comfortable with it, it would give you max carry. But there is then the argument to say, well, if you're that much more consistent with the hybrid and more comfortable with it, are you just going to revert to that?
Yeah.
Quite possibly. You've got 2 inches less. It's 75%, but you've got 2 inches less club to get back to the ball. It's going to be a bit easier to get to work.
Yeah.
Potentially what you could do is if we did the shaft on the 3-wood, if that felt really comfortable, you know what, actually, I'd like to do that with the 5. You can always match that in down the line. But I think with how you hit the hybrid, you're more likely to default to the hybrid.
Yeah, I think so.
We'll do the same double check, but again, there's a lot of continuity here. You're at 50, let's just say 55, 60, 66, 67. There's always a bit more of a jump up to irons because the length drops off a bit more. But there's a nice sort of blend of weights through there. So you're not having to do wildly different things with them to get them to work.
Yeah. Is it right if I just get a Diet Coke? Is that okay?
Probably wouldn't get away with the adverts with the gardener taking his shirt off anymore, would you? The generation that will remember those ones. This one's got a little bit more loft. This is really...
Is that the limited X hybrid?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Well, this one's got a little more loft on it,
Yeah.
but it'll at least give us the look at how it swings. Actually, almost sort of more relevant, the kind of next loft back as well. It shows how many left-handers have hit the table.
How many do you get through here, would you say?
It is getting more. It's a bit like I was seeing a few more ladies recently as well.
Yeah.
But I think it's become easier now you've got all the interchangeable heads to be able to cater for the left-handers, because you're not having to have a built, not having to have lots of built clubs specially made up. So even in the fitting cart bags, it's become easier to cater for. So we are seeing a few more. Okay, I'll see one. We're going about 10 grams heavier, so it's a noticeable amount. Okay. Take that back a little bit. So actually one of the things we can see with this head is this particular one's got a bit more loft, but it's come up with no spin whatsoever. It's one of the things that rad speed in particular was crazy strong on flight. I've always spun hybrids a lot.
Yeah.
And the 19 spun like my 3-wood.
Really?
Yeah. And this has retained some of the strength of flight. So the SZ series is a little bit softer on flight, which suits you a little bit more.
Yeah.
This one's, that's a Canon. Just do this from a just going to switch weights just to get a little off this. And so this bit of the bag is really about consistency, but also getting the flight to the point where it's used to like that. There's, other than say into a Hooli on links, there's no use whatsoever in that, because
Right.
it's if you've got a bunker short and you carry it, you're not stopping it.
Yeah, yeah,
And so
yeah.
this sort of club, we want it to be a reliable yardage and something that actually is going to get up and fly to it. You get that in a slightly iffy lie. There's no lift to keep the ball airborne.
Well, for me, this is the sort of last club that I might think I've got a chance of landing this on a green.
Okay, yeah.
Whereas the 3-wood or the 5-wood, I'm thinking, if I get very lucky, it might run on.
Yeah. And that's really where 5-wood should actually give you that higher flight and softer landing club. It's soft landing shot, sorry. It's with the extra spin and elevation, it should actually land softer, at least as soft as the hybrid. Nice. So similar in that we just, a bit like when we were looking at the fairway shafts, the first one was just getting a little bit left on you. And then that last one we went to, we just reined it back a fraction,
Yeah.
made it a bit less bottom end heavy, and that squared up a little bit more easily.
It's just a better tempo, but
Interesting.
quite
how
low
we've
spin
gone.
still, isn't it?
I mean, the head's very low spin. Yeah. We just, I'll see one more. I wonder whether they've just gone almost slightly too safe. Okay. Yeah, so that one definitely squares up more easily. Does it square too easily? Because the first one, it looked like you had to just heave a little bit more. I'm going to get one other alternative there. It's almost sort of both. You could argue go both good and bad. We've got all these options, so there are kind of minute differences.
Yeah, well, also, I think I strike this well, so it's not the end of the world.
No, it'll be interesting. Once we kind of settle, then we'll go back and see. Because again, as we said, it's better that are hair light than hair heavy. That way, you're not forced into really heaving it over. Is there enough extra stability from the slightly heavy? So with the forward, yes, we could see that. Definitely, contact was much improved. Is there a similar improvement with the heavier hybrid shaft, or does it just make it harder work than it needs to be? It's going to go slightly heavier in the head. Yeah, with the current Cobra heads, you'd pretty much have to go up to the 24 degree to get almost a 19-degree ball flight.
Yeah.
In terms of spin. And so it's great for some players where you're looking to pair spin down and keep it going forward, whereas you're not a spinny player.
No.
So actually keeping a bit of spin on the head is a good profile. Okay, yeah, it's just got away a little bit. I think the previous show, just keep that little bit of extra head weight on. Because we're starting to see that face get open again for you. And that's the thing, we all think we're worse than we are, but actually it's very consistent patterns. As we change the characteristics of the club, it affects you the same way each time. It's really working out where the thresholds are.
So how does this shaft differ from this one, weight-wise? It's slightly more?
So we're on or just over 70 grams. That one's, let's say, 66, 67.
Yeah.
So it's a similar kind of differential to the fairway. It's whether there's...
And the club head isn't making a huge amount of difference?
It's not as good on flight on this one.
Right.
So It's just obviously this one being a previous model, I haven't got that one to
Yeah,
interchange
yeah.
with. Very similar in terms of shapes and the general kind of structure of the head. The only thing that this head's doing is taking a lot of spin off. Yeah, that definitely moves cleaner with that shaft weight. Definitely. Yeah, so going back to that, again, you just, through that one in particular, through the ball, you can see that body, arms, the club are much, much more in sync. And by having a bit more head weight, we've lost the one that you flip right.
Right.
So it'd be interesting then to do a couple back with yours.
Yeah.
Just to kind of normalise it and say, right, having swung something a little heavier, when we go back to this, is there enough of a difference to go, you know what, actually, yes, I can commit more to the heavier one?
Yeah.
Or does that allow you to feel like you can just get away with a little bit more? So the answer there is no, don't change it.
Okay.
Which is fine.
Yeah,
It's fine. We've kind of tested because again, you can see you can stay in balance, just turn onto it and collect it. So we've still got that 55, 60, 65 gram progression.
Yeah.
And that's back into very neutral spin, good launch, very square. That's great. So if you were to do anything hybrid-wise, and this is where we then look at, right, where's the trajectory on the upper end of the irons in this club? The only thing that would potentially be worth adding would be the 21 degree in that as a counter and a higher, so if you went and played the West Course or something like that, through the air yardage is important. So a 20, the 6 iron, there's a bit of a gap between that and the 6 iron.
Well, I didn't bring it, but I do actually have it's...
The 21, is it the 4?
No, it's a 22 degree Callaway
Okay.
hybrid. But I just took it out of the bag to get the Cobra 5 wood in.
Yeah, so looking at that, the one, if anything, I would suggest is just finding the higher loft version of that, a 21 degree of that, because that then, on this one you're getting, that was really nice to hit, 192 carry, 210 total, that was really well hit. Land coming into a green, you still, 200 to 205 probably is a kind of a solid one, 215, 220 at the 3 wood, or a little bit more, the better that goes. Would then be getting something that, that's at 3.7 on spin. If you go to a 21 degree, you're going to be 4.4. So you're then up to your 7 iron spin, but something's going to be carrying 180.
Yeah.
Whereas the 6 iron, the really strong hit 6 iron had less spin than that hybrid. So you've then got potentially the way to play the bag would be to leave out the 5 wood, go driver 3 wood, 19, 21, I think it's 21, 22, whichever the higher loft in that one is, and then 6 iron. So you've got a 6 iron that can come in flat and chase, or if you've got a par 3 into wind, you can use that. If you've got a shot with the bunker short that you need to land it soft, you then got the hybrid that'll consistently carry a little bit further and land soft.
Or I learn how to hit the 5 wood.
But
and
even if you
crank it
do
up.
that, I would probably still be looking to find the higher loft one of those.
Oh, right, okay.
Because at the moment, if you've got a carry of 175 or 180 and you want to land soft, you haven't got a shot. And that's then where it's a very, you can take that, that last there, those couple in particular, you're around the 190 carry without having to rein it back. The strong one, up 190, but you potentially really free it up 195 carry, and it's got a bit of stop to it, but to get it to come back to 175 or 180 land stuff, you're going to have to take a bit off and cut it up.
Yeah.
And your 6 iron, if you get it to carry that far, it's coming in like a missile. So actually, it's more, even if the 5 wood starts to go really well, that's still giving you around the 200, 205 yard total.
Yeah.
You're going to have to chip one to get the distance back. Whereas I think that's at 90. I'm pretty sure it's 21 with that one. Would then bring you that 10, 15 yards back.
Yeah.
And just stand and deliver, and you're at the 175, 180 carry, finishing 185.
I'll pop the Callaway back in the bag then.
But dependent on So the Callaway heads generally, do you know which model it is?
Arcos can tell you.
Are generally slightly lower spin. So,
Right.
and that's really where, if you were able to find, for example, the same model, same shaft, it's a 480, it's one of their stock shafts, regular flex. If you were to find one of those on Golf Bidder or something like that, or Left-Hand Golf or one of those, then actually just making sure that the length and the balance things all sit in sync.
Callaway X Series 2018.
Sit XR 2018 X Series. And they generally tended to be a bit more drawbars, a bit lower spin.
Yeah.
It's still going to give you height, launch angle wise, but the flight's going to, okay, not as hot. I mean, these ones are very strong.
Yeah.
But the flight's going to be a little bit more going.
Yeah.
If it launches high enough, it might well work out. But the ideal one would be to say, okay, well, if we can just get it matching to that, probably pick one up for 100, 150 quid max, I'd have thought. Now it's a couple of models old.
Yeah.
That would be the ideal way of doing it. And it's
Yeah.
just literally finding that same matching shaft, and that's something I can have a little look and see if I can find one. But because you then get that same balance of launch and spin, same flight window,
Yeah.
exactly same shaft and feel and all that side
Sure.
of things. But that would then that would give you that nice alternative of shot, say particularly longer par threes, if you've got trouble short, of not having a window where you go, oh God, I haven't got a club. Or a longer par four, you're getting 250 out there. If you're playing a 420, 430 yard par four, like where I play at St George's Hill, there's one where it's playing up to a green. Well, the one that comes in flat's no use because it needs to land and stop. So it would give you that kind of shot, which currently just isn't there.
So far, the only sort of the changes we're making is a swing weight to each iron,
Swing weight on the irons, yep.
potentially shaft on the 3-wood,
Yep.
and seeing if I can find. I could even ask Cobra if they've got any. But
Yeah, they might. Or if not, there'll be somewhere to find.
yeah.
I think we'll
So
find.
it's not sort of root and branch.
No, and it's one of those instances where we're at the kind of the fine tune end of things. It's where you find people who've got an old set of dynamic gold S300s that because their dad had a set and they used them, and they're just most inappropriate for 90% of golfers.
Yeah.
And we'd then be going, holy Christ, these are really heavy,
Yeah.
and we can make a massive difference. Whereas actually, you see the guys at Cobra done a very good job, and actually and what we've seen quite clear is that balance profile of not tip heavy, which is what the KBS shafts and the UST helium in the driver, the recoil, the UST shafts, those particular ones are exactly that balance point,
Yeah.
and that just really works for you.
Great.
For me, it's the worst thing I can have.
Right.
I need tip weight because I pull on the handle.
Yeah.
But the great thing is that the stock shafts that they offer, work for you really well. So we're just making little fine tuning.
Great.
I'll grab. Wedges are the one area where
We're going to be in trouble.
we're going to find some differences, just because they sit quite substantially outside of the balance profile of the rest of the set.
Yeah.
I'm going to we'll go off the front one because they'll launch a lot higher and I don't want them to bounce back at you. And that's the thing, actually, with fitting. Actually, it can be as beneficial to come and get a fitting and find out that what you've got works.
Oh,
Just
totally.
as to find that something's horribly wrong, because
The last thing
at
you want
least
to
it's
come
that
away with is
affirmation.
thinking like the last 100 rounds of golf I've played have been in vain because my clubs weren't working.
And there have been times where some people do come away and go, "Oh God, I don't want to play with these ones anymore." Where you find something substantial there.
So what
And
do you want me
then
to?
you-
Which one do you want me to hit?
We'll start with a 56. So, and then the problem is for a lot of players, if you do find that, they could be doing something with their swing, thinking it's the swing, whereas actually the clubs can be the major part of the problem. So just a comfortable, probably kind of comfortable 3/4 swing, just a kind of pitching shot. Okay.
What I find is there's a huge drop off in distance when I get to my pitching wedge
Yeah.
down.
Okay. So
But that
this
may be technique as well, so I'm just not as confident with how you swing a wedge.
Well, I mean, this one in particular, this is where we can see the effect of the weight. So with your irons, you can see, and the fairways and the hybrids and everything, we can see where you're able to turn through and stay in balance and finish. With this one, all of those you can see that, and your weight's falling that
that's
way.
what I do. I end up like this.
So what's happening is because there's so much weight coming through, it drags you through. So instead of being able to turn and collect and keep the club working around you, that weight pulls you down. So instead of coming up and round, you go there. This is where we've gone up, say, 25 grams, which is 25% of the shaft weight. It's a big jump up in weight. So that you kind of are able to walk to pick the ball up, but it's because it's dragging you down and through, and that's the bit that your pitch and posture is changing, divot depth's changing. So there hasn't been one swing where you've been able to hold your position coming through. I'll get a lighter shaft for you.
So you're talking the shaft is this much heavier, not the head.
The balance is quite head heavy on that as well. So we want the irons to be kind of between, say, D1.5 and D3. You're up at D6.
Okay.
So it's a mixture of a much heavier shaft, because you've gone from 90, let's say 100 in the pitch wedge, you've gone up to 125 in the wedge, which is, we normally want heavier, but that's a lot. But it's then heavy in the club head end as well.
Yeah.
And it's that combination of that momentum dragging you down rather than pulling the shoulder down, or then coming up to try to counter it, which is where your pitch of swing, your balance is changing. So I'm going to take 10 grams off the shaft weight. Well, you'll probably strike it towards the toe a little bit. There's also where your consistency of contact, distance control, divot depth, that's just hard to maintain. So that's a little weaker in loft. Let's make that 50. Highly technical. There have been hydraulic machines designed to do it, but they did find quite a lot of breakages. Okay. A little bit more. And do you consciously do anything different with the wedges from a technique point of view?
Not really. I don't really know what to do with them. I very rarely play full wedge shots.
Sorry, it's still slightly off. Let's just clamp the back of that. Which actually is fine. It's full swings with wedges generally mean less control anyway, so the kind of the knockdown, the three-quarter swings are often a good way to go. It's kind of, if you go full tilt at those wedges, then that could really go wrong.
Yeah, well, what I find is that for some reason it just ends up opening the face, and I can hit a full sand wedge 60 yards.
Yeah.
And it sort of plonks down in front of the bunker by the green. Whereas I'd rather hit a sort of buckle to buckle pitching wedge.
Yeah.
Or bump it on. But also the courses I'm playing, you're very usually able to run it up to the green with like an 8-iron or. And I'm more confident playing that sort of like Dad's 80-year-old mate who plays off 12 somehow. Every green he's going into with a 7-iron, regardless of the distance.
I've got a friend of mine who who will putt. He'll use the edge of a bunker to putt to get it close. He won't use a lob wedge. Okay, so 10 grams off, straight away you're able to finish stood upright rather than pull down towards the ball. So that's a good start straight away. Okay, so there's a little bit of, you definitely lost that head towards the ball effect as you come through the shot, lost that. That had a little bit of a cut up, but actually it's also stopped launching quite so high. Okay.
How far is that carrying out of interest?
So those ones are 60, 65.
Yeah.
So just put a slightly fuller swing on, see what that does. Right. Yeah, 77. But again, that one's able to square the face up. Whereas, yeah, 79. Whereas if you were to try and put that strength of swing on that one, we're open on the face and just about got to 70 yards, but that started to go off left again.
Yeah.
So it's sort of kind of the opposite of what we're doing with the fairway wood, and that's gone 34 degrees launch angle versus, I'll just re-tag this one. That was the last one here. Versus 32, 33. So that drop-off in distance is probably partly because it's not that comfortable to put that sort of swing on, so you're just not going to go anywhere near it, which then forces you into the chipped swing with the pitch wedge. But the more you go after it, the more left, the higher it's going to go. So there's no point. Whereas actually, you can, just by changing shaft weight down, I'm going to put one other one.
Is that the same?
So this one, it's the same loft.
Yeah.
The Mim has been kind of superseded by the sort of snake bite ones, but
Yeah.
there's a bit of wear on them. I mean, Vokey say 75 rounds. There's still plenty of groove there. What's happened is the kind of little grooves between the grooves are just starting to wear a little bit. That's not going to affect consistency of shot. Actually, that's like your 60s. Basically as good as new.
Apart from the first shot I hit with it in a bunker.
Stone it away.
Brand new.
Always the first one. This is much more about bringing them less differential to the irons to give you back the control over the club again. I'm going to there's one other shot. I'm going to go slight change of that. And this is actually just the lighter version, technically softer flex, but the 125 is the stiff. This is the 115, which is the reg. But it really is just 10 grams lighter.
Yeah.
Just a very slight variation on this. Just going to make sure I can get it on. I'm just going to make sure I can get it off. Just make sure that you might just need a bit of a clean out. Otherwise, I'll be there wrenching at it. But and actually from a wedge play point of view, again, balance and everything. If you're stable here, then the strike point's the same, delivery is the same. You start to use the face, get the spin. I think it's confidence. It's so much of wedge play is, as I played in a match yesterday, and it's like anything short game, chipping wise. The first couple came off the club face exactly as I wanted it to, ran out close. You go, so you're not thinking, what am I meant to be doing here? You just then, short game was on point yesterday, whereas you can guarantee if you fluff the first one, then that's it for the rest of the round. But if it allows you, again, just to find strike more consistently, ultimately distance then tightens up. And if it doesn't feel so, it's kind of like a game within a game, it's such a different setup to the main body of your irons.
Well, I'm sort of using this sand wedge for most of my short game shots. This is slightly more recent. I just wanted one that I could go, okay, let's just gap this for every type of, and sort of use a clock face with that one.
Yeah, I think the differentiation for these heads is thank you very much, is by having, there's a little bit of tread. They've added a bit of tread between the grooves on this, but they're just not quite as aggressive. But as you move away from the face, you can start to kind of loop. It can kind of pop flight up a little bit, and also the sole's a little bit clumsier. So you've got a very wide sole then. So
Yeah.
that. So there's a lot of sole there. So unless you're someone who hits down heavily, that can get in the way. Whereas most aftermarket wedges, you can see, kind of much narrower on the sole. So actually, if you've got half decent strike, most of the time, particularly in our bunkers as well, wide means it doesn't go into them, especially this time of year now they're getting wetter. Whereas a little narrow can actually be a little bit cleaner at the back of the ball. So the out of set wedge gives you a bit more spin control. Because the centre of gravity, the mass in the head is right on the back of the ball, slightly more consistent flight.
Right.
Granted, for a stock standard swing, weight further back gives a bit more forgiveness. But actually on a wedge, again, with where your technique, 2 degrees down, 1 degree on the path, it's not like you've got a massive cut across.
So I shouldn't be using that one for my short shots.
I think if we get the setup of the wedges better,
Yeah.
I think you'll get the control back, and then you'll get a bit more kind of directness of feedback off the face, but also the control back, and you'll get a bit more spin off the out of set wedge as well.
So full shot here.
We'll do a couple of each, so a couple of the 3/4 ones and then the fuller one. Okay. This one's that little bit lighter, and actually, I don't think it takes you into the back of the ball as well.
Okay.
So go on, we'll see a slightly fuller one. It'll probably swing better on the fuller one than the 3/4 swing. Okay, yeah, pretty square. Yeah. Yeah, so when you're putting a bit more into it, that slightly lighter weight works well, but then you go to the 3/4 swings and it doesn't compute through quite so well.
Right.
So that's where, if you go back to just a little knockdown one and then switch it back over, that little bit, the 4 or 5 grams extra of the other shaft help the strike on the little shots. That's nice there. Okay, a little more fading, we'll see. I mean, that would be a definite improvement over these.
Yeah.
So, I think heavy in wedges has always been the kind of the norm because extra weight, more control, more consistency. But most the standard dynamic gold wedge shot's 135 grams, 130 grams. So it's just a lot of shaft. Whereas iron shafts historically used to be 120 grams on average, so it wasn't that much heavier. Now a lot of them are 90 to 100 grams. It's a big difference now. Later, yeah.
Oh, that was horrible.
You know what? I might have opened my mouth too soon with that previous comment. So I think, actually, I'm going to put the old look in. I think because this was just a lot better than your existing ones, that looked a lot better first time round. Having gone lighter, that looks quite hard work now.
Right, okay.
And so pretty much anything I put in your hands would have been better than that first time up. Because that's, going back to that, that's now missing left.
Right. So which weight is this one?
This is the slightly lighter of the two. So we're at 110, 115.
And what's the difference between this? Is this the second one, the first one I tried?
This is the second one. Yeah, squares up again. So quite noticeable in that one. It's 4 or 5 grams, but that one, without trying to, squares up. Whereas when we went back to the previous one, it was then noticeably 3 or 4 degrees open and drifting off left.
Yeah.
So the first one looked really good first time round because it was 10 grams lighter than what we got.
Uh-huh.
And then having gone lighter and back to it, it really didn't look very good. And that's so much more under control.
Right.
So this is actually the same shaft that's the heavier one of the irons we tried.
Right.
So that differential into the wedges is nice. It's enough weight to give you some control.
So how much lighter than my original one is this? 15 grams?
So, yeah, pretty much 10%.
Yeah.
But you then, in terms of the irons, they progress from 92 to 98 through the main body of them, maybe 100, and you're then at 110, 110, 112 here, rather than up to 125, 26. So it's got that continuation of the blend through, like we were looking at with the 55, 60, 65 with the woods, 95 to 100 odd to 110. But once you go to the partial swings, that's where the weight's important. If we go down to the same shaft as in your current ones, then there's not that weight to drop you in, particularly out of bunkers and a bit of rough.
Yeah.
You want to use the weight just to drop the club in the bottom of the ball. So that's where I think the out of set wedge gives you more versatility than that one, mainly because that back edge graduates off a little bit more trail. It's just a little bit neater. I'll put that onto here. That width can make it really quite clumsy. So if you were playing a shot into a bunker and you lay it open, let's get the angle right. You've got a vast amount of bounce there, how high the leading edge sits. With a narrower sole, it's still there, but it's a lot less.
Yeah.
So that across a variety of lies, you've still got plenty of bounce to use, but where we've got the timing tighter and cleaner. You're at face to path half a degree. You're now into the back of the ball more consistently. That wide sole is forgiving on wet turf, or if the timing's off, it kind of skids it into the back of the ball. But once you stop needing it, you've then got the versatility of that tighter sole
So
shape.
play that one when it's muddy and that one when it's bare.
Yeah, I mean, you still got plenty of bounce there.
Yeah.
I think it's if it's muddy, you just open that up a little bit and give yourself that little bit of protection to stop it digging in.
Right.
You've still got between the higher two lofts. Let's see. There's still a little bit more bounce on the back edge of your 56. It's a little bit of a softer progression on the 60, so you can always square the 60 off, open the 56 up to get to the same base loft and have two very different bounce profiles. So over here it's key because we get hard packed fairways in summer, soft sand, and wet fairways in winter and hard packed sand. So having the ability to have not a lot of bounce or a lot of bounce depending on the time of the year is still really important. But by getting the shaft weight down, at least you're going to find strike a lot more consistently.
Yeah.
You could say, well, is it worth refreshing that one? I think the more important thing is getting the swinging right. I mean, you could certainly find an argument too. However, if you're getting strike, you can get spin, flight control more consistent. You're down at 31 degree launch versus 34, 35.
I mean, I could get a new one of these with just a lighter shaft. I mean, because if I'm going to have to replace that probably next spring anyway.
It's probably into the start of the season. Yeah. You could. The only thing I think, so with Cobra at the moment is what their stock's going to be like. It's going to start to graduate down. I mean, the snake biter progression off these. So you could certainly refresh face. I think it might well be a shaft. I have to just double check on their options. It might well be a shaft they offer. If not, it's not a strung up shaft.
Yeah.
But yeah, you might choose with that one. I mean, this one you could argue functionally there's not a lot of performance upgrade to change it, other than
Yeah.
you just won't be looking at that scratch mark, or to have two completely
Yeah,
consistent wedge heads. And the set gap wedge, I mean, in left hand they only do 52 as the lowest loft, so you'd have to bend that forward a couple of degrees to get the loft. I'd be looking more for kind of 50, 55, 60 to blend into
So what's my gap wedge?
49.
Yeah.
So
Was it 49, 52, 56, 60?
it's probably overkill,
Yeah.
realistically. So you could take a 52, bend it down to 50, but then that one's the set gap wedge is more a stand and deliver consistency, direction. Once you get into the feedy shots of the sand wedge, then there's less of an argument for that head style.
Yeah.
But you're going to lose a little bit of distance going out of set versus this one, and you're going to lose a little bit of forgiveness. So if it's more of in the gap wedge, the A wedge, it's just a short version of the pitch wedge.
Yeah.
And something that's kind of right at let's say, probably 9,500 yards. It's just a stand and deliver shot. And then below that, we're getting into the feely shots.
Yeah.
So there's far less argument to replace that one.
Yeah.
And have that, obviously with that shaft in as the irons as your full swing clubs, and then we go to the finesse ones underneath.
Yeah. Sure.
But potentially you'd make the 55, 56, 55 just to try and make the gap a little bit smaller.
Okay.
But you say if you chose to update both heads, then one or both heads, then certainly the 56 by next summer is going to need.
Yeah.
It's going to be a performance upgrade on the face. Which then leaves us grip.
Yeah.
So let's see your hand size to 9. Okay, yeah, so you're quite, in terms of, we hold our, I'm going to do it on here, we hold our kind of hands up to the camera. What you'll see is that John's got much longer fingers than I do. So I've got a decent sized palm, but then short fingers, whereas wingspan that way is far greater.
It's an octave. Or the piano.
No wonder I can never play the piano.
Well, nor can I, but I did measure it on a piano.
But shouldn't be guitarist. But, so what that means, it's really about, it's not just length of hand, it's diagonally, because that's the way, as you grip it, that's the way it closes down.
So do you measure hands and sort of fit them to grips, like you would with a glove or?
Ish, yeah. I'd look at how it sits in how it sits in your hand. So, for example, let's just take one of the sort of standard Cobra grips here, particularly in your top hand there. So what I can see from this is, if you take your left hand off, so little fingers way past the equator, kind of the 90 degrees of north, south, east, west. And then there's an awful lot of space, so your fingers overlap. There's a lot of dig in, so they come around too far. So when you get that overlap and dig in, all that happens is that all that space in here allows the club to move around. You've got to hold on to it tight to stop it twisting. And that loses a bit of fluidity through. So you've got to keep control, particularly if you get in a bit of rough and need to kind of stop the head twisting. You've got to really cling onto it for grim death.
Yeah.
And what you'll also find is in that trigger finger is that you have to close it down to get control of it. So I'd rather go bigger to get it sitting in your hands a little bit more comfortably, and you not have to clamp down to grip it. I'll get a larger grip. I'll get a mid-size to start with. And then I'll get... Right. So we go to mid-size there. That's going to fill out. So you're less far round, less overlap around past the equator there. Still got a bit of overlap there, but it's less. So you've got more finger to grip contact.
Yeah.
See your left hand on as well. Let's put them both on as if you're going to hit them. Yeah, so this is where I'd probably look to take a bit of the tapering out. So you've still got to, in that bottom hand, you've still got to close it down. So this is the principle of the +4 grip. So you take the taper off so that bottom hand doesn't have to white knuckle it. So if I go to that, you can see it's a little thicker in the bottom hand. So in that finger in particular, it can kind of just sit on the grip a little bit more rather than have to.
That already feels like it's just sat there.
Yeah. Whereas with that one, the bottom hand in particular, you've got to just tighten it up a little bit to get control.
That's interesting.
And if you then go back to a standard grip, that'll feel like a toothpick.
Yeah.
So because of that kind of wingspan that way on your hands, you've got a lot of finger to wrap around and to close down around the grip, which then means the moment you have to tighten up, these forearms lock up the whole kind of triangle across there, and it tightens up and you lose that flow. So going bigger will take a bit of the hand tension out and allow you to get a little bit more freedom through the ball, which should mean just more consistency. Not having to hold onto it to stop it twisting, and shorten those muscles, tighten them all up. It's like throwing a ball. If you go tight arm on it, it never goes anywhere. If you just let go, everything happens more naturally. So we can lose that tapering with any of the grips. However, at this size, there aren't that many that don't go heavy. So you've got your kind of standard Tor Velvet, which is basically, which is the same as on the wedges.
Yeah.
So you can go bigger in that. It's just a very standard rubber. There's not a lot of tread to it. You've got, Lamb can do the Sonar series, which there's quite a lot more. They did a grip with Michelin years back, so that's the sort of tire-like tread pattern on it. But it's not rubber; it's a different kind of polymer altogether. And then the other one, which is a firmer feel, is that the Z cord, which is a much harder grip. So especially getting into wintertime, and I get dryish skin, the cords I find just a bit harsh.
Okay.
So I use a.
I like this guy. It's just slightly tacky and slightly.
Yeah. Got a little bit. I mean, there's one other variant on it, because that one's also got a bit of some markings on the grip as well, which some players like using just from a hand alignment point of view. It's also exactly the same material, but they do one of the wrap effects.
Oh, like sort of.
Yeah, the old leather.
I don't like that.
So I mean, what you get with that is a lot of purchase, and as long as you kind of every now and then just a bit of detergent on it, you really keep the tackiness, but it doesn't degrade like rubber does. So you don't get that like the shininess you're getting on there. You actually won't get with that.
Well, I've had this club for 3 years, and I haven't changed the grip in it. So
that one's pretty good, but the wedge one, you can see it's starting to go squeaky, which is where the rubber just degrades and shines up. And that's the one thing with rubber, it has that kind of degradation to it, which that won't.
But is it worth I mean, because you can't really test this with a club before you've put them all on, can you?
The way I would tend to do it with that is what we can do is I can put one of those on, for example, say the driver. I can put one of those on, see how comfortable that is. In principle, it'd be something we could switch one on. You could have a hidden here, but it'd probably worth getting one out there and kind of whether it's humidity.
You don't have like any of these shafts with a bigger grip on.
We do on some of them, on some of the longer iron shafts, but it's the one bit where to have that immediacy of switching around and weights and grip types, things like that. We know that the size is going to be a better thing, but I would say the way to go would be, I'll double check to make sure I've got one, but I could swap one onto, for example, onto the driver, because the grip's the same weight as your current one.
So we wouldn't need to change anything with what we've been doing so far to accommodate that grip?
All that's going to happen is, because the dead weight's the same, it doesn't change anything else about the way the club flows.
Sure.
It's just going to mean I'm going to hold on to it so tight.
Yeah.
So we could put one onto that for you and see how comfortable it is. Because if that was comfortable, then I would just, size-wise, I'd just do the same thing. But we could make sure that feels comfortable in kind of real conditions and say, right, yes, we can just track that all the way through.
Lovely.
I'll check we've got one. Or can you check we've got one of these Sonar mid-size? It's the normal Sonar mid-size. It's that one bit of waiting for someone to come. You can kind of air blow them on and off, but they twist.
Yeah.
Because they're not secured down. And then you can guarantee that whatever you put on, someone will like the feel of. So, but it's interesting. The grip weight thing has been. We've had much more of a focus on that the last couple of years. I think. Why would that be? I think just a few more options available at the lighter weight. Historically, if you wanted to go big, you just had to go heavier, other than that one. Perfect. So we can keep that. Well, whatever swing weight now is exactly as you want. It should be just over D2. Oh, one question. Would you want that on the top as a reference marker? Or you can go, still got the other markings, or you can go that way around.
Well, the thing is, if you change the loft of the driver, then
it
off,
will move around here. And then it's an easy one to switch about. If you did, you can reset the grip. But yeah, that's the only downside to.
Actually, I don't mind. That's fine.
Yeah, no, go on.
Because it's on the standard setting anyway.
Yeah. Depending on shaft width, it's sort of towards 2, I would. Yeah. Neil's used to standard grip for years, even though he's got farmer's hands, essentially. Yeah. Just he to a point was used to them, but it just became comfortable. Now I think you're bigger than standard should definitely feel comfortable and a little bit more controlled. Depends if you're left or right eye dominant as to where it looks sometimes. So kind of lined up can look if you're.
Well, I think it's because the head is perhaps slightly open anyway.
It can, a bit of it. So like some of those lines around here. So like the tailor-mades often look open because the toe end opens up a little bit more, but the main body of the face is square. And so if you're right eye dominant, the kind of a dead down the line grip can look a little bit to the left of centre. Left eye dominant, a little bit to the right of centre. Yeah. That would look better. Definitely better with that little extra weight back on.
Yeah, and it just feels like, I mean, it does feel quite slippy with my left hand, actually.
Okay.
Just a tiny bit of sweat makes that quite slippy, but it feels much grippier with the glove.
Top end.
But
Okay.
it just feels like I can hold it slightly lighter.
Softer. Yeah. Yeah, interesting. Getting the weight back on, straight away, those two are just dead back down the line again.
Yeah.
And this is where it's kind of worth seeing. I'm just pushing that T's popped out a little bit. It can be worth doing the one club, because if it continues to feel a little bit slippy, then it might be we revert back to the tall velvet, just build up the bottom hand a little.
Yeah.
Which was the equivalent grip to what you've had on, but in the bigger size. Yeah, so with that extra bit of weight back on, you're dead down the line each time again. So it's probably where under the gloved hand it's got that bit of tread on, and it really.
I mean, that feels like absolutely solid, but it's already.
And things we've all got different not textures, but kind of different oils and things in the hand. So it's whether.
But then, fingers crossed, you're never playing 2 drivers in a row.
Well, it's potentially a case of saying, okay, is that something that, seeing how that feels, is that something that is workable with as an individual shot, or actually does it feel like you lose a bit of grip? If it's the latter, then we can easily, because we've not gone weird on the grip weight, we can always reverse it to that sort of, and that's the tall velvet material. You can reverse it back to that kind of material.
Yeah, that does just feel so much more. But then. Yeah, that's so weird. Does that feel to you?
You see, I get the purchase off of those, but again, it's all to do with your skin texture under the glove hand. It's absolutely dry. There's no kind of natural kind of oils and greases and things on there. So for me, because I get a slightly drier skin texture, I find that really kind of bites and grips. If you get if you've got a slightly more on a very sort of oily skin texture, that could, well, that's with a different material, not being rubber, it will have a different purchase.
I really like the size. It's so nice.
Yeah. Do you want me to switch it back to that grip style?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in that way we can retain the size of it, but it then won't feel. I think it's all well and good feeling the top hand really stable, but if you feel that your bottom hand's gonna go like ice on it, then let's revert it back to a kind of more neutral
And
material.
you would just say put that on all the clubs if it feels good on that.
I would absolutely match that across. I think
Yeah.
so. The sizing in particular is going to be really key because if it feels really comfortable in the hands of that size, then you'd then go to some of the others that feel like a kind of chopstick kind of thing. They feel really small.
So that's a mid-size but with no taper.
Mid-size, but yeah, reduced taper in the bottom hand. Yeah. And so with those, you could do the weighting on the heads because we'd look to do it through the shaft anyway. When you change the grips over, we'd do that at the same time.
Right.
So what I'll do is we'll whip that off, switch it back over to the tall velvet.
Yeah, I'm just thinking 11 in the morning in Spain with a hangover and 30 degree.
Yeah, good hit. Yeah.
Still a bit high on the face. Is that showing up on the face monitor? I mean, that's just me and.
I mean, that one's high on the face is good. I mean, that was really, really level. Yeah, little bit high, little bit. I mean, if you're going to miss it anywhere on the face, the tee's just vibrating and moving out. If you're going to miss it anywhere on the face, slightly high and slightly toe is great.
Yeah.
Oh, looked a little bit cutty. Yeah, but that's path from face to path. So face to target's half a degree off.
Yeah.
That's just path got a little bit across it. But actually what that head's doing really well for you is keeping this, to not go above 3,000 for one that's faded off like that's really good on the shot path.
Yeah.
Just to make sure, I'm just going to check that grip again just to make absolutely sure. It's not. Yeah, fine. See it getting that little bit higher. Does that feel like it sits in your left hand better?
Yeah, I mean, I've just realised if I was actually playing this hole, I'd be starting the ball there.
Yeah, the tee would be a bit further right. Yeah, they set out on a tee that's basically on the edge of the first green. So probably hit a little bit of a pull fade on that one. Yeah, so that one, you've got different swing altogether. You've got down and across that, so it's gone low launch and higher spin. So that one looked like you kind of almost tried to pull it towards Russack's.
Well, I was sort of, I guess that just psychologically, I'm playing for a fade there.
Yeah.
Because so whether maybe I drop my shoulder
So
a
actually,
bit.
I mean, what you've done is you've made that swing, you hit it really well, but you've made it a lot less efficient.
By doing
So
what?
by thinking fade, you've gone down the cross. So you basically cut the legs out in front of the ball. So the launch angle's come down 3 degrees, and the spin's gone up 2,000.
That's so interesting.
So you've just taken 20 yards off your drive.
Wow. Okay. So if I line.
So that would be in tennis. That would be a really good drop shot.
Right. That's interesting.
So whatever you did, don't do it. So you're much more through the back of the ball there. That's 138 ball speed. Yeah. So slight fade, and you just hit that 20 yards further.
Yeah.
So main difference being, it's still a bit of a fade, but the previous swing, 5 degrees down, 11 out to in and 5.5 open. So you've got 4,000 spin because the leg's just scythed across it.
Yeah.
That one, you're dead flat. And okay, yes, a fade, but face to target's dead square. But you've gone from 228 to 247. So almost the more, from a driver point of view, the more you can turn and rotate through, almost like if you were playing, okay, I know you're bright, so it's more like a flat backhand tennis shot. It's almost slight. I'm not going to go to, you don't want to top spin or rip it, but you're trying to catch it shallow through and turn, rather than if that shoulder gets across and hits down on it, you get that sidey cut.
Yeah.
Okay, it could be quite reliable, but you might as well get your 3-wood.
Yeah. Oh, that's very interesting.
But the moment you get that angle of attack shallower, the spin comes down to the mid-low 2000s and you get your run out.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But definitely, I mean, you look a bit more comfortable with that in terms of in hand. You
Yeah.
feel like it sticks to your hands a little bit more. But yeah, certainly with drive, I mean, this is the thing with drive, if you kind of default to something that's almost too safe, then you've actually just sort of taken all the advantage of taking driver out.
Yeah. I'm trying to hit a draw.
Almost a case of aiming kind of left centre and you know, hit through the line, 2 turns and a swish. So and it's a good problem, but the problem you have is you have the ability to move your swing a long way. So you went from 2 swings before, you were 5 down, 11 out to win and 5 open. You've just gone 3 degrees up. Okay, you pulled 5 degrees across it, but you shut the face 6 degrees.
Well, I thought that was going to be a draw, but it
Oh,
wasn't.
it was just a very strong one.
So, power draw.
A strong pull draw. So actually, the swings you made earlier, like if you're thinking draw, think a really small one.
Yeah.
Just a very slight right to left. Really doesn't need to, because you move your swing a long way, you're always overdoing it. So it's actually like take about a third of what you were thinking and just do that. Much squarer through. I mean, it's a much quieter swing, but that one you've gone absolutely squared it off. You took a load of club speed off, but that is a perler of a delivery.
Yeah.
So the problem for you is that you are able to make a big movement with the swing, which is great because you can adapt your technique, and if a coach says to you, right, do this, you can do it. But the downside is you do it about 5 times as much as you need to.
Yeah.
So
sometimes
it's
it's
just
as much as
reining
a
that thought back and going, okay, if I think I need to move it, if it looks like you need to move it 10 yards, then the feel is moving it 2 yards.
Yeah.
Because that one, okay, swing speed went back from 92 to 84. So you took off 10 miles an hour ball speed, which is 20 yards, which then you back up to 250 on. But what you did from a swing line point of view, your path and the base to path were absolutely dead square. Yeah, 139 ball speed. It's good. So slight draw. Bosh.
Lovely. Right. Well, is that everything done?
So there's everything. So basically, the key takeaways are: 1, most of the set's good.
Yep.
The bigger grip's a must.
Yep.
And that'll just help the hands relax and get a bit more consistency of relaxation through the shot. Just helps a bit more softness through the ball.
Yeah.
The fairway, the 3, we can go a little bit heavier on the shaft to complement, rather than going 55 driver, 55 fairway, 65 hybrid, just graduate it to 60 grams to split the difference, but also keep the same amount of energy required to move it. The moment you've got to back it off a little bit, which is where the smother comes from.
Yeah.
Hybrid's good as is, but we'll see if we can find a same setup in the higher loft. I mean, 5-wood, you could do the 5-wood, but I don't know how much you'd use it if the hybrid's reliable, but it would be an option if you wanted to.
Yep.
In theory, maximise flight, but if you're getting 240, 250 with the driver, how often do you need high flighted 200 coming into a green? Is it more of a high risk shot than not bunting the 5, but the hybrid coming in a little flatter and letting you play it more like an iron?
Yep.
Irons, we need a bit more head weight, and with all of these, match the bigger grip through. 6-iron through gap wedge, it's just giving you a bit more feel for the head. And the wedges, don't worry about the set sound wedge, but probably refresh the wedge heads, but bring the shaft weight down from 125 to 110. And then I can email these bits over as well.
Yeah.
And that then sits a little bit heavier than the irons, but continuity of balance and weight progression through, and stops them being quite so cumbersome and clumsy.
Brilliant.
But otherwise, little fine tunes really. But we can just tidy everything up through the set a little.
What was I think I had these bent back. I think these were made 1 degree weaker when I got them.
Okay, yep.
So just for me to check, what was the loft of the 56 degree?
56 was 56.
Oh,
so they
perfect.
are
So
at 56
So I
and 60.
I haven't had those bent. I think I just had
No, and
these.
if anything, I'd move the 56 to 55.
Yep.
Just because the gap wedge at 49, and we just want to nudge it a little bit closer
Okay.
to it. Yeah.
Brilliant.
So, fine-tuned.
Incredible. What a day.
Cool.